market garden right in the middle of an underserved community. We have a market. If you want to buy some fresh vegetables that were grown here, we welcome you. And I know that you're going to have a great morning. And if you have any questions about the patch, I'm here. And if you have any questions about bees, we have John and Dan and a whole group of people that are here to help. So enjoy and have a great morning. Do you have a question? Oh, I'm Jamie Castoro, and I work with the City of Dania Beach and Broward Regional Health Planning Council to create programs that draw people here so people can learn about healthy living and healthy eating in Broward County and all the opportunities that there are for both of those throughout the county. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
No problem. Get started. Go and have some fun.
Hi everybody, my name is John Colville. I'm the president of Broward Bee Association. We're happy that everyone's here. I know some of the faces, I know some, not all of them. Who's here is a beekeeper already? Okay. Who's a bee geek? I'm a beekeeper. Who wants to be a beekeeper or is interested? It's a really cool hobby. I mean, you will embrace it, and every day that you keep your bees and every time you open up your hive, you're going to be excited about the new stuff that you learn. And we, as bee geeks and people that have been keeping bees for a while, love sharing our knowledge. Okay? So today, if you have any personal questions, you can talk to Dan Lewis, you can talk to Christopher, you can talk to Gary, you can talk to me, you can talk to Harry, talk to Mark. These are guys that have been keeping bees for a long time, and they will share and help you out with anything that you have. Any other questions you have. We'll also show you some of the stuff inside the hive, but we also have, very fortunate with us, some guest speakers. And Christopher right here is setting up his computer. You're going to get your computer going. Okay. Christopher Alonso is our newest addition to the Department of Agriculture Bee Bureau. He is our inspector. I call it our inspector. The state of Florida has him covering Dade County, Monroe County, Broward County, Palm Beach County, Martin County, Collier County, and Lee County. I mean, this is one guy that's trying to oversee and manage probably, 100,000 hives? More than that? Depends. The Department of Agriculture, when you become a beekeeper, he's going to teach you about registration and what you should do. Listen to what Christopher tells you to do, and being a registered beekeeper is a benefit. It's an extreme benefit, and it's worth $10, and you will get it back in tenfold. So, if you're ready, Christopher, this is Christopher Alonso. Thank you very much, Chris.
How are you guys? Good. My name is Christopher Alonso. I work with the Department of Agriculture and the Apiary Institute. We're going to go over a little bit about some of the things that you would have to do if you're interested in becoming a beekeeper to be in regulation with the state laws. First, you would have to register with the department. You can do that either online. The first question people ask is, when do I do it? Before or after? If you're in a residential area, I would suggest you do it within a week or two of you getting your house. You can have the best relationship with your neighbors, but unfortunately the bee sting. You don't want this to happen, but it can happen. So before you get your hives, it's always better to be registered with the department. Those $10, like John said, go a long way. As long as you are under compliance and following all of the rules, the state will represent you with any time. It does occur. Okay? We started apiary inspections in 1919. Almost 100 years ago. When we first started, we had 10 inspectors. We're not very far from that. Right now, we're running with 12 inspectors. And we have quite an increased amount of backyard beekeepers and commercial guys than what we did 100 years ago. Right? Apiary inspections is a viral article of Florida agriculture that's working to prevent the introduction top 5 in the country. Annually, the honeybee industry is worth about $27 million. Right? We contribute about $65 million to increase production numbers. That's in the stuff that we pollinate. So if without bees pollinating, most of the foods that you can get at the supermarket for fruits and vegetables wouldn't be there. Right?
Yeah.
Please.
Here we go.
Oh, hello? There you go. All right. Let's go. All right. Registering with the department. All right. For anybody running 1 to 5 hives, it would be $10 a year. Anybody running 6 to 40 hives, 20. 41 to 200 is 40. 201 to 500 is 70. 500 plus is $100 a year. There we go. Thanks.
Thanks, Christopher.
All right. Once you are registered, this is what your registration would look like. For those that plan on moving bees, you would have to carry this with you wherever your bees go.
When you say moving bees,
Yeah, whenever you move them, that's mainly for commercial.
commercial, right?
Yeah.
But if I move it to my cousin's house,
You want to have this with you.
do I have to also go in there and say, hey, I moved it to this address?
No, you don't have to say. You don't have to do any of that. As long as we know where you live at, that's fine. So any information we can manage. Okay. You can keep bees as long as there's not an association that prevents you from it. We do not overlook the associations. We can't choose those rules. So if you, so you gotta look in the paperwork and make sure there's nothing there that says that you cannot keep bees. Oh. Sorry.
Thanks, Chris.
No problem. This is an example of a apiary in Palm Beach County.
That's no.
You see how? If you look in the farm, there's no fence there. So the state would require you to have a fence surrounding the apiary so that nobody can get to it directly. They would have to open a door or move the gate or something. They just can't walk right to it.
That only Palm Beach?
No, this is just an example. Like if you look in the back, there's no fence dividing from the neighbors, right? So then this is a way that you can keep bees because they do need to be fenced off.
So if you have a fence around your whole property.
Yeah, it wouldn't apply to you. This
So
would
if you
apply
have a fence, you're okay.
Yes,
Right?
if you
Yeah.
have a fence, you're okay.
In the alley?
Sorry?
If you already have a fence in the yard,
You don't need
trees
this.
there.
Yeah, this is for the people that
Because
wouldn't
the
have a
alley
fence
has
around their
a
yards.
tree barrier, hedge barrier. I know, but in our alleys, because of
Yes,
our alleys,
15
if we had a hedge or a tree barrier,
All the way
it
around.
meets requirements.
50 or 15?
15.
That's what I thought.
If you have a 6-foot barrier, which we call a flyway barrier for the bees, then that wouldn't apply.
Okay.
So that's only if you don't have a 6-foot barrier. You would have to be 15 feet away from the fence.
If we have a wooden fence, it still needs to be 15
No.
feet from
If it's
it.
6 foot tall, you can put it right against the
You
fence.
can put it right against the fence.
You don't have to worry about the 5-yard setback?
No.
No.
No, that's only if you don't have a flyway barrier. Some people have shrubs. If you have the shrubs around it, that would count as a flyway barrier too. As long as it's 6 feet tall. Any other questions?
6 feet tall or 15 feet away? One or the other?
Yes.
One or the other?
One or the other.
Got it.
Regardless of 15 feet away, it does have to be fenced off. There's another example of apiary in Monroe County.
Hey, I have a question for that.
Yes.
If your neighbor gets stung by a bee, there is no way to prove that it was your bee that stung them.
Unless they
It
want to
could have
spend.
been bees from the next block.
There is a way. Unless they want to spend a lot
All
of
my
money.
bees have a little blue dot on it. Was that the bee that stung you?
Explain to them why they want to be registered, Christopher.
This is why you want to be registered. If your neighbor gets stung and they want to proceed and take you to court, they
Black
can.
and yellow.
And the state, as long as you're following the rules and are under compliance, the state will represent you in court. So those $10 go a long way. If you're running 1 to 5 hours. Can they prove that your bee stung them? In theory, no. It's very hard. If they wanted to, they could run DNA tests. It would be very expensive. I thought anybody would do it.
By the time the sun went down.
Yeah, by the time the sun went on, yeah, no, our bees are not marked, so there's no way for them to specify. You don't know how many phone calls I got after the hurricane came by, the fences fell down, and beehives that had been there for 10, 15 years, the neighbors never knew. The fence fell down, now they know, now they have a problem. So that's why it's always good to register. This is one here in Broward, Apiary in Broward, Palm Beach County. There's a one of the micro apiaries in Oakland Park. Alright, 5B54. This is the rule, the statute for beekeeping in South Florida. Once you become a registered beekeeper, some of the people that are already beekeepers would get an FL number. That was like a registration. We're not doing that anymore. Now we're doing firm numbers, which is a 480 number. Right? You will get a 480 number.
Okay.
The 480. Yeah, you have both. Everybody has both. We're not doing FL numbers anymore. If you have your hives marked, don't remark them. But now we're doing the 480 numbers. We'll let you know if it does change. You have to mark your hives. Each hive has to be marked with your registration number. It has to be at least an inch, half an inch or larger. It needs to be visible to the to your neighbors or to the public. As an example, somebody just grabbed a sticker with a Sharpie and put it on there. As long as the numbers are on there and it's visible, it's fine with the department. To be in compliance, here in Florida we run European stock. So whenever you have a hive, you have to prove that your stock is European stock. If you requeen it, you have to buy from a certified queen breeder. In Florida, your bee clubs could guide you in the right way. Would be the best way, or call me, and we'll get you to somebody who can sell you one. But you have to have European stock.
How would you know if you're European or not? Let's say you don't have that information.
If you're buying your queens, they will be.
What if I captured a swarm?
That's part of being in compliance. You have to requeen with a European queen. You have to buy from a certified queen breeder.
Oh wow.
So for those of you catching swarm right now, it's swarm season. Each swarm needs to be requeened with a European stock queen.
Oh wow.
Yeah, to be in compliance with the state is the only way that we will know that you're running European stock.
Can you repeat that?
And if you're catching swarms, you have to requeen with a European queen from a dealer, somebody who sells European queens. Yeah, they'll be certified from the state saying that they have European stock.
We have a problem with Africanized bees, and they're very mean.
Yeah,
So to keep
that.
be good neighbors, people living next door, we don't want to keep mean hives. So we want to keep European hives, so they're more docile. So we want to replace the queen when we get wild hives. Wild
Yeah, and even our commercial guys or backyard beekeepers, nobody likes to work mean bees. Everybody tends to follow these rules, but we have to enforce them. Yes.
So if you get a swarm,
Yes.
and it's a mean swarm because the queen is mean, and you put a European queen in there, does it make everybody be nice?
No, but the lifespan of a bee is about 21 days, right? So then you have about a month. By the time the cycle goes around, she'll have new brood and new eggs, and those new babies will come out. Those will be European stuff. And then
We'll trick the Africanized bees into raising European bees.
yeah, they'll raise them.
Wow.
They do it.
I heard that also she also tells the woman, I don't know, man, maybe, no?
No, just as it changes the
Okay, only baby.
Any other questions?
But the male that mates with her, does she already come mated?
Yes, she does make. Or if you buy from a certified queen breeder, then she comes. You can buy them mated or not.
Okay.
If you're requeening a swarm, you're usually gonna buy a mated queen. Yeah, yes sir.
If my hive swarm and I split them and I have queen cells in one, do I have to, and then she goes out and mates and comes back to my hive, do I have to requeen her, that hive?
If it, in theory, yes.
Okay, thanks. That's what I wanted to hear, thank you.
Yeah. Even if you got your own swarms, to be compliant, even if it is your own swarm, you have to be.
Once she
Now
gets
we
thrown
do.
out of the house, she has to stay out.
Yes.
That was a trick question, Chris.
All right.
There's a lot more.
With the department, the two things that we're looking for are Aurora mites and American flower. If we do find American flower in any of your hives, we have to burn them. The only way to get rid of that is burning the whole hive with the bees in it and everything. You would be under quarantine for 30 days, the rest of your hives, and after 30 days we will come back, and if we find any more American flower, that would be burned at that time. Okay. There's 4 ways to identify or to look for American flower. For newbies, the easiest way would be the toothpick, the roper. You get a toothpick, you go to the cell that you suspect has American flower because of the color. You turn it in the cell, you pull. If it ropes, then that would be a good sign of American flower.
What is that? Foul blue. What is that?
It's a bacteria. The department does a lot of outreach, like today. Some of these we do the National Honeybee Survey. We assist with cross-division training. We do the state fair, annual beekeeping meetings, and then we do the UF, the bee college. Any new beekeepers are planning on becoming a beekeeper, the bee college is a very good way to go. You would learn a lot in those 2 days. Well, thank you for your time, and if anybody has any other questions.
You're gonna be up next.
I'm sorry? Yes.
Are you guys finding American foulbrood?
This year we only found 1 case in Hernando County.
So it's working.
It is working. Now, the thing with American foulbrood is all of our commercial guys and some of our older beekeepers have been doing it for a longer time. Before we could get to it, they'll burn it. Everybody knows that American foulbrood, there's no other fix. The state hasn't come across too many. We probably won't even find out about too many because people are just doing the right thing. Yeah, people are doing the right thing. Any other questions? Micro Apiary. John is up.
We're actually going to talk about that next. We'll give you a more detailed, thorough explanation of that program, okay?
Yes, sir.
Are you reaching out to these cities and letting them know what the statutes are relative to backyard beekeepers? The reason for my question is I put a hive in my backyard, and of course the neighbor then said, no, you can't have a hive. And I said, well, yes, I can. They said, no, you can't. They sent a code inspector out. Code inspector says, I'm going to write you up. I said, take your best shot, but let me suggest that you have your supervisor contact me before you do that. And long story short, the supervisor called me 2 days later and said, Mr. Allen, thank you very much. You're absolutely correct. Florida statute trumps any local municipality ordinance, a city ordinance or any other ordinance that you have. The exception is if you live in a homeowners association. The statute, as Chris said, doesn't trump a homeowners association. So be mindful of that. If you hear somebody say you can't do that, yes, you can, because the state statute overrides any local. But my question,
What city do you live in?
I was in Davie. So the code inspector comes out, didn't know, tried to roughshod over you. Well, stand your ground.
As long as you're registered. Yeah.
Well, you have to be registered to say the statute. The statute says,
but part of being in compliance is being registered. So the inspector could have, if you're not registered, they can't find you. Because
but he didn't even know about that.
Right. Yeah, bueno.
He does know that.
He does now.
Yeah, he does now. But yeah, that's why those $10 go a long way. If you have your registration number on there, it would have been much simpler. They would have taken your number, they would have called the department, and yeah.
Actually, what I did was I put an empty hive out there, knowing that the neighbor was going to say something. I said, "It's an empty hive," and so I sort of walked them into it. But long story short, Florida statute trumps any local ordinance.
Yes, yes it does. Any other questions? No?
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
thank you.
Can you hear me? All right. Okay.
What?
Hey. Yeah. We haven't even opened the bar yet. Okay.
Me and this guy are gonna get along fine.
A couple things about what Christopher was talking about. In general, Broward County, most of the code enforcement officers already know what you would come, right? Bill was talking about. But they also do know the rules, meaning like in Hollywood, I know an actual story where the inspector comes up and when he gets a complaint, he goes to the residence and then he goes, looks at the hive and he'll look for the FL number or the firm number now. If you go online and you type in like freshfromflorida.com registered beekeepers, every beekeeper in the state is on that. And if you're not registered, then that inspector will give you a hard time, and you could be in jeopardy. So register your bees, okay?
And also, John, if you are registered, they say thank you and they leave.
And they leave. That's right. And here's my take on it. A registered hive, a registered managed hive has livestock in it. An unregistered, unmanaged hive is a pest. So, and the state looks at it that way. So, if you're a registered beekeeper, you're keeping livestock, and it's the statutes under livestock nuisance lawsuits that protects you. So, what Christopher was talking about, if your neighbor gets stung and somebody wants to litigate with you, the state will represent you. We're going to go into more, we'll answer other bee questions at the end because it's an ongoing process, but you asked about the micro-apiary project. There's a program called micro-apiaries. It's a relatively new program, and the guy who thought about it is here, and he's going to talk to you about micro-apiaries, and that's Mr. Dan Lewis.
All right.
Good morning. Morning. Well, I got into beekeeping. I became not so much of a beekeeper, but a honey thief, because I love honey. And so the way I got into beekeeping was like many people. I just wanted to save some bees that happened to be in the wrong place on my property. So I called some folks, looked up in the internet, and there was the Broward Bee Association. They sent me a couple of mentors. And they came and they took this huge hive that was in a collapsed trash can, plastic trash can, with their arms. They had told me before they were going to do that I should go buy the equipment and get a suit. I looked like the guy from space, Gumby, and it was perfectly white, perfectly clean, and nothing was going to touch me. These guys came in just a skirt, and I mean just easy, and they reached into this trash can with their bare hands. After that, I became a beekeeper. I've been a beekeeper, backyard beekeeper for about 5 years, and for all those people who are not a beekeeper, who would like to be one, let me tell you, it's fun, it's easy, you can do it, and more importantly, thanks to the various bee associations in Broward County in particular, you have a lot of people who you can call for help. A lot of the licensing has to do with disease and other things and other problems. You won't necessarily see that. You'll just basically be managing your bees and making them feel good, splitting them and having the normal issues. And the more you play with bees, the more you'll get hooked by it. And the more you'll learn, the more you'll become a bee geek. And instead of being just very simple, I got some bees and I'm going to go get some honey, you're now talking about, genetics and DNA, queening, and all this other stuff. And that's really interesting, but that's the secondary thing. When I first became a beekeeper because of that situation, I went to a number of Broward Bee Association meetings a number of years ago, and the biggest problem that beekeepers were talking about is that bees were under attack. They had the collapse, the colony collapse issues. Nobody really knew what that was from. You had 30% loss of beehives. You had a very unusual patchwork of backyard beekeepers in Broward County and South Florida in particular. And one of the biggest problems that bees had, I'm assuming that most people here understand the importance of bees for the diversity of our plant life as well as for our food, because we wouldn't have the kind of trees and the flowers and flora. I live in Victoria Park in Fort Lauderdale. We have a lot of trees, a lot of plants. We wouldn't have that diversity without bees. And so the problem with backyard beekeeping is we're running out of space. Anybody who drives on any road in Broward knows we're an urban county. We aren't a rural county. And where do the bees stay? Where are the bees supposed to be? So in concert with a number of people who were bees, I said, why can't we use some of the public space that we as taxpayers pay for? We pay for government space, we pay for parking lots, we pay for bus depots, we pay for parks, we pay for municipal buildings, county buildings, state buildings. We pay for all those, and every one of those has public spaces as part of that. Why can't we put a little apiary in each one of those spaces in a patchwork of all around Broward? I mean, we already own that, and it's important. And the people who I talk to at the Bee Association and others say, well, we rescue bees, but we don't have any place to put them. Because where are you going to put them? If you have a real business of rescuing bees, which is a good thing, where are you going to put them? And by the way, if you ever have to talk to a person who says they're going to take bees from your house, and they're going to get live bees, or live bees from a water meter or something, the question you need to ask them is, okay, so now you're going to save this colony of bees, where are you going to put them? Because if they don't know where they're going to go, they're going to kill those bees. Or as one pest guy does, he says he does live bees, he puts them in his truck and he drives out on 27, and by the time he's done, there's no more bees. Okay, so the idea came, let's build small little apiaries on public property. That was the micro apiary concept. So we thought a 10 by 10 garbage type enclosure, you know, like what many places have, a little wall around them, the garbage thing. And we were going to initially, the first one in the world was going to be here. But we had some political issues, and that became a problem. And by the way, I'm on the board of the Broward Regional Health Planning Council and was the past chair of the Broward County Charter Review Commission and Growth Management Advisory Council. And so I knew a lot of the political structure to try to do this, so I wasn't coming in here empty-handed with just an idea. So we started off with the design of being just simply a fence like this. In fact, we were going to put it right there on the other side of this enclosure here and put slats in it, a 5-foot fence, slats, and put 5 hives or 10 hives or 12, 15 hives, and that's it. Well, things evolved. We built it. We were able to raise a little bit of money, so the first micro apiary in the world for public property was put in Oakland Park at John Pastoral Park. Really cool. Since then, we've got, I think we have one in Tradelands Park. Broward County and their park system wanted to put them in Broward County parks. So we have one in Tradewinds right now. We have one scheduled for Heritage Park and Treetops Park. We are talking to the cities of Fort Lauderdale, Coral Springs, Parkland, Sunrise, Davie. We're still talking here, right, John? For Dania Beach, Hollywood, and other places.
Coral Springs and Parkland.
Yeah, and right now we have planned 15 that are pretty well down the planet, which is really cool. We have now 4. We have one that just opened in Deerfield Beach, which is really cool, and they're recycling beach. Never in the world has this happened where public property was used for bees. And the reason that we did it with the public policy is that we pay for our parks and leisure services, and I was one of the people who sponsored and who created the $400 million bond in 2000 to buy parkland and to buy other space to preserve it for Broward County. And I said, listen, part of the responsibility of government is to nurture and protect our environment, and you can't do that without also doing bees and the plants and the wetlands and everything else, everything combined. Since we built the first one and the second one, and now the third and fourth and so forth, we've had people from all over the country and all over the world come and look at our micro apiary program. Micro apiary is a small, generally 10 to 15 feet by 10 feet enclosure in public property. It has to be specially licensed by the state. They sign off on it. We do surveys, make sure it's fine. We also have a distribution network where we want to make it, not closer than 5 miles or 4 or 5 miles. So we have it all on a geo map, and it's really cool. And here's what we're doing now. Now we have a platform where people can do studies on bees, an AV study, and other things in a controlled environment. It also, the plan for the micro apiaries was to launch drones up in the air from managed hives to help create a bio wall against the more aggressive Africanized bees that are coming up from the south. And all those things were theoretical, but it seems to be working. We now have the ambitions and the audacity to think that we can actually create, if we get enough of these set up, something called a Broward bee. Instead of a European bee, we're going to have a Broward bee. Why is that possible? Because queen rearing is kind of complicated, and for all those people who want to get into backyard beekeeping and beekeeping, the top of the line is when you start to make queens. And then you get certified with European queens, and now you got all these queens. You're like, hey, cool, I'm making these queens. Why can't we make a Broward queen?
Yeah.
That's the best.
Yep.
And when people want to start a backyard colony, why can't they go to someone who has managed bees and who has brought them and recovered them and buy a newt of bees, of Broward bees, and take them home, make them pets of some sort. So that's the idea that we're doing. It's really kind of interesting and exciting, and we're moving. We hope that right now we have about 15 planned. Our goal was to put 30 in Broward County. We know they're going to start doing some in other places in Florida. We know they're going to start doing some in Georgia and other states. And it's really cool, and it now means that if you're a beekeeper in Broward, you can be particularly proud that we invented together a word that's not part of beekeeping, micro apiary. And just as an interesting thing as I close and answer any questions, initially we said it was the micro honeybee apiary, and there were some distinguished people from other states who said, are you talking about little midget bees? We have to be very careful, so we said the honeybee micro apiary. Thank you.
I have a question. You
Yes.
harvest the honey from the micro apiaries, And what do you do with it if you do harvest it?
Okay, you're not talking to somebody who owns the micro apiary.
No, I understand that. The county does.
Here's how it works. The property owner, in this case the governmental entity typically, owns the apiary to 4 walls. And then they retain a manager, a beekeeper, to manage those bees consistent with the state requirements. All right? Part of that permit for the person who is managing the bees, we built the enclosure, that's about $7,500. And by the way, we put windows in them because we found out that these are great educational facilities, so people can go look at the bees and kids can do programs, and it's very educational. So it's about $7,500. The beekeeper who manages the inside of the bees, those hives are his or hers, okay? They enter into an agreement to manage those bees on behalf of the property owner. And they have their license on them. So those beehives in there are licensed to them. Sometimes the agreement will be that they'll share the honey, the produce. Sometimes the bees will be available for sale and replenished as recovery happens. And interestingly enough, we also found out from our experience now with the microapiaries to support live bee recoveries is that we now need to find a quarantine area to bring bees to quarantine that are taken from the jungle and quarantine them to make sure that they're healthy and available before they go into the microapiary. So it's really kind of interesting, but I hope I answered your question. Yes, ma'am. If you want to do backyard beekeeping at your house, you know, it's about $300 or so. I mean, it's not bad. And the truth is, the equipment is pretty simple. The bee suit, you go crazy like I did first. I mean, I wear boots and Gumby. I don't get stung. There's some other beekeepers that I get stung. I don't care. I do care. I don't like it. I don't get stung. And so I spend a little bit more money in protection. And I have a simple rule with my bees. I consider them armed and extremely dangerous until they prove otherwise. So, you know, there's things. But I have actually built an apiary at my house to kind of mirror the kind of apiaries that we have other places, because I show elected officials and other people what you can do. And I live in Victoria Park, less than a mile from Las Olas. So, you know, that's where I keep bees. So it's inexpensive, it's fun, it's worth it, and the truth is, if you have a couple of hives, you're going to find that it's really a lot of fun, and the honey alone you can sell to your neighbors and recoup your money. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, in fact, that was one of. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I familiar with hives that they use in commercial areas? Like in Paris, they have them on guards and so forth. The answer is yes. That was part of my argument to the elected officials and policymakers. I told them, listen, if the Plaza Hotel in New York can have beehives in their garden on the 4th floor, then why the hell can't we have it in a relatively unused area in a park? And by the way, the fence here is 6 feet, John, right? And then on top of that, we put trellis now for another 2 feet, so the bees just go straight up. So you can sit right next to the apiary, unless you have a lot of perfume on or scented stuff, and the bees are going straight up. And bees, another great issue that I was always asked about, he says, well, if you bring us a micro apiary at, for example, Tradewinds Park, isn't that going to saturate all the bees right here? And the answer is no. Bees will forage up to about 4 miles, depending on who you talk to. And they're going to go wherever the food is. If you have food right there, they're going to be there. But then once that's depleted, they're gone. They travel and they shoot out of these hives. If you stand back and if you go to Oakland Park or Tradewinds and look at these bees, they're going fast. They're going bang and they're out. They're gone. And it's really kind of interesting. But it's cheap. You should do it. If you have any hesitation, don't. Go have fun, and it's good for everything. But do get licensed. And then get a mentor who will help you walk through everything and deal with everything. I started at the same time John did. The difference is he really knows his beekeeping, and I'm just purely a hobbyist. Okay, so I'm more like everybody here. Yes, sir.
Have you thought about putting these apiaries on state land?
Yes.
And what's the state say?
We're working on it. The parks, it's hard. You know, it just and they have their parks in different places. We'll also talk about putting. We've got Broward College that wants the apiaries. They want to put them on their property or on their roofs, and they want to put together a program. What's the program? The degree, John? Is it environmental studies?
Yeah, the Department of Natural Sciences, along with their environmental studies and their medical program, they wanted to do a certificate program for beekeeping.
Imagine that, Broward College giving a certificate for beekeeping. So it's really kind of cool stuff because it's public policy, it's good policy, and I tell elected officials, I tell them bees are good for the environment and they're good politics. So think about it. Yes.
And if the bees die, we die. So we need bees.
Well, I don't even get that. If you want to get reelected, you want to be bee friendly. And we have a lot of bee people in the area who will be happy to be impressed that you're supporting a good program like this.
And a lot of sticky policies.
Huh?
Sticky policies.
Yeah. A lot of sticky policies. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Happy to.
Thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
Interesting about Mr. Lewis is that there are a lot of people that were trying to do this apiary in public locations for a long time, way before he showed up and way before I was fortunate enough to get involved in it. And we kind of like showed up at just the right time when these are good politics, and Dan has good friends that helped us make things possible on a governmental level, and we just kind of stepped into it. The program is really cool, and you could, if you want any more questions, see Dan or me after the meeting. The next speaker, one thing as Florida, as South Florida beekeepers or Florida beekeepers, we have some of the best minds in bees and in the state. University of Florida is leading the way in research with bees, and we have our university office campus here in town of Davie. In the poncho that is at that location is Dr. William Kern. He's associate professor. He has some really interesting stuff. If you ever want to know about native honeybees, native bees, or local fauna, this is the guy that will keep you. And you can actually call him. I don't know if he wants me to say that, but you can call him up, and he answers the phone, and he says it's Bill, and you can ask him anything you want about bees, and he will help you out. Today we're fortunate enough to have Dr. Kern here, and today he is talking about something that someone brought up: is why do bees swarm, and how and why honeybees swarm. So, without any further ado, Dr. Kern, thank you very much.
Good morning. All right, well, this is a topic that a lot of people are interested in, and it's also a topic that a lot of beekeepers don't have a real good understanding of. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why honeybees swarm and how they do it. So this is the public perception of what a bee swarm is. where you have this cloud of bees that's coming after people. All right, that is not what we perceive as a bee swarm. For us, a bee swarm is how a hive reproduces. All right, so this is why honeybees make a hive and comb. All right, and you can't see it unfortunately, but all of these cells contain a little curled larvae down in the bottom. They do this to reproduce, to multiply. All right, but this is not how a colony reproduces. All right, this is how a colony builds up and multiplies its numbers. Why do bees make honey? And unfortunately you can't see it. This is a bee gum covered in snow. European honeybees usually have to store almost 100 pounds of honey to make it through a winter. So that's why they're making honey. They're not making it for us, they're making it for themselves to use. When we think about honeybees as eusocial organisms, we should actually consider the colony as the superorganism. So the colony is going through all of the functions that we normally think of as a living organism. All right? It maintains itself, that's the queen laying eggs and producing babies. It feeds itself, sending out workers to collect food and bring it back. And then when it gets big enough and has filled up its space, it will divide into two, and now you'll have two colonies. So we have to think about a honeybee colony as a superorganism when we're dealing with honeybees and their behavior and biology. All right, so why do honeybees swarm? And like I said, this is how they reproduce. They have to, in order to have two colonies, they literally have to split apart. The work of the colony, the queen laying eggs, the workers going out getting food, taking care of the young, this is all to maintain the colony. So it's maintaining the organism, the superorganism. So swarming is how we get from one colony to two colonies. You probably know this, but just to make sure. All right, how is a new queen made? When the colony gets too full, there's too many bees, they've run out of space. That's one of the things that can stimulate a colony to swarm. All right, we can stop that as beekeepers by doing what's called a split, where you literally split the colony in half. And they will make a new queen for the other half, or you can supply them with a mated queen if you're trying to maintain European colonies. So the queen either lays an egg in the swarm cell. So if they get really crowded, the queen will actually lay an egg in the queen cups that the workers have made down at the bottom of the hive. If something happens to the queen, what the workers can do is they will actually start building a queen cell by extending out a worker cell. All right, so something has happened to the queen. She's stopped laying fertile eggs or diploid eggs. So all she's producing now is drones. So they'll take one of the workers, a young worker, and they will actually make a queen cell. So when we have queen cells up on the frame, especially up in the center of the frame or up near the top of the frame, those are called replacement cells. So this is the hive trying to replace a failing queen. If the cells are on the bottom of the frame, those are swarm cells. So swarm cells, the queen has actually laid an egg in those cups. And then the old queen, the workers start starving her a little bit. They reduce how much they feed her. She'll lose weight. She'll get more slender. Now she'll be able to fly again. So she will fly, and then about half of the colony will leave with her. All right, once she is gone, those daughters that are down on the bottom of that frame, the first one to emerge will come out, pop out through the bottom of the cell, and then will go and kill all of her royal sisters.
Wow.
She'll chew through the side of the cell to kill the larvae or the pupa. All right, now she is going to become the new queen for the colony. So there are some other things that can happen. So if the queen is getting old and has stopped producing, or the amount of queen pheromone she's producing has decreased, the workers will actually work to replace her. That's where you have a supersedure cell. Those cells up high on the frame. So she is going to be replaced by the workers. Usually in the springtime, the spring population is built up. They're completely filled the box that they're in. All right, so we've got crowded conditions. There's not a frame that doesn't have bees covering. You also will sometimes get what's called brood nest congestion. For those of you who remember Bud Grant, he used to call it, it was honeybound. If a colony is so full of honey, they have to start putting it into brood cells. Now there's not any place for the queen to lay her eggs. So the colony is said to become honeybound. And they tend to get defensive and get ready to swarm. So the queen initiates swarming by depositing eggs in the queen cell, or if something's happened to her, the workers will actually start building a queen cell over a one-day-old larvae. That's usually if something has happened to the queen. All right? And usually we start seeing a lot more drone cells about a week to 2 weeks before the queens are produced. So these are swarm cells sticking on the bottom of the frame. So that's where the queen is actually laid an egg. All right?
It's like a peanut shell kind of.
Yeah. So these are, and then these are supersedure cells. These are ones, they're about halfway up on the frame. All right? So we also have drone cells here and worker cells. So that's the difference between supersedure queen cells and swarm queen cells. So once that first queen emerges, and she came out of this one, so she emerged out of the bottom of the cell, you can see that she went on all these 6 other cells and she chewed into the side of the cells. So they are now considered aborted cells. She either killed the larvae or the pupa inside, or she just chewed into it and the workers pulled those larvae and pupae out and got rid of them. All right, now we've got 2 things that are happening. The old queen has left with half of the workers. The new young queen, who will become the queen of the colony, has eliminated the competition. I guess that is the gentle way of saying, I guess you would call it sororicide. Yeah, killing your sisters, sororicide. And then she will go on, after about 3 days, she'll move around the colony. She's releasing some pheromone. So she's sort of establishing herself. Then she will fly out on her mating flight. She'll fly out to a drone aggregation area, and she will normally mate 5 to 8 times a day, and she'll do this for up to 3 days. And she will store all the sperm that she gets in her spermatheca, which is a little holding container in her abdomen. And that's all the sperm she will have for all of the fertilized eggs she will produce the rest of her life.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of sperm, and it's also a lot of eggs. I mean, she's producing between 2,000 and 3,000 eggs a day for up to 18 months. But that's not really fair, because up north where they live for 18 months, 6 months they're not laying eggs because it's winter time. All right, so she will then come back, she starts laying eggs. She will never leave that colony again until the situation is such that that colony will swarm again, and then she will leave to start a new daughter colony. So the old queen starts the daughter colony, the new queen starts the mother, or takes over the mother's colony. And if you, let's see, how many people have been around a swarm? Okay, so you just walk out. I don't even usually worry about wearing a bee suit if I'm going into a swarm, even if it's an Africanized swarm. We have had some problems though in a situation called a hot swarm. Has anybody encountered a hot swarm? That's where they act like a ticked off colony. Usually that is because it is a colony that has been excluded from someplace. So somebody's done a bee exclusion, the bees have been kicked out of their home, they're not happy. And as soon as you get close to them, they will start stinging you. All right, that is not a normal swarm. That's an unusual situation. When the old queen leaves, she's going to go just a short distance. In my bee yard, I know exactly where they're going to go. Almost always. There's a big ficus tree right next to my bee yard, and they almost always go to the same branch. And then I have had a swarm that would go to the palm tree behind my bee yard. And that's it. Those are the two places I always go to look for them. While they've gathered there, outside of the old hive, usually about 20, 30 yards away, they will start sending out scouts. The scouts will go out, look for another hive site.
Real estate.
Yeah, they're going out, checking out all of the cavities, potential colony sites. When they come back, the scouts will do the dance. All right. Does everybody know the circle dance and the waggle dance? No? Okay. The circle dance is what bees do in the colony to tell other bees where there's good food supply within 50 yards of the colony. If it's farther away than that, they do what's called the waggle dance. And so it's sort of like a figure-8 dance. All right, so they go around, wiggle, go around, wiggle. All right, so the vertical line is the direction to the sun. All right, so the angle off of that vertical line, they do the waggle, that tells the deflection of the flight from the direction to the sun. That's how they tell other bees where to go. And so this is the waggle dance. And the fewer times they waggle their bottom, all right, the shorter the distance is. The more times they waggle, the farther it is. All right, so the angle that they do that waggle part gives them direction. The number of times they do the waggle says how far it is. So basically it's, vector and distance. That's how they tell each other. So in the swarm, the scouts will go out, they'll find a good place, they'll come back, and they'll start dancing. And the better the site is, the more energetically they dance. So more scouts go out and check out the space. They come back, they start doing the same waggle dance. All right, more and more scouts go out. Pretty soon, you've got virtually all of the scouts doing the same dance. That's how the swarm decides where they're going to fly. When they reach that consensus, that's when they fly to that new swarm site or new nest site. And this is just a little bit about how the angle is the deflection off of vertical. The vertical is essentially supposed to be the direction to the sun. So if they're flying towards the sun, their waggle dance will be going straight up and down. It'll be going straight up. All right, if it's directly opposite the direction of the sun, it'll be going the other way. But that's how they communicate. And this, I know it's hard to see, this is actually a scout bee who's come back and is on the outside of the swarm doing the waggle dance. And you can see that there's a whole bunch of bees sort of right around her that are watching her or sensing the waggle dance. And they can actually do this in the dark, but on a swarm, they're doing it out in the open. They don't actually have to even see it. They can feel her doing the dance. They're touching her with their antenna, and they can count the number of times she wiggles her abdomen, and they know which direction off of vertical she is indicating. And this is how they figure out where they're going to fly. And it's just showing the waggle dance again. Oh, you can sort of see it. And sometimes, Janie Ellis was real fond of saying that honeybees know what they're doing. They know where they want to go. Sometimes they don't. All right, this is one of my swarm traps up in Palm Beach County. This swarm decided they were going to build their colony underneath it. Well, I mean, we did get them collected, but that was not the way they were supposed to do it.
Why don't you just turn it upside down?
All right, why can't you do that? Why couldn't you just turn it upside down? The cells will all be pointing in the wrong direction. Remember, the cells all point slightly upward so that the food stays in with the larvae. You flip that cone over, now all the food is going to run out. And probably the larvae will start falling out too. All right, that's why when you're moving comb, and you cut the comb to transfer it into a box, you always have to make sure that the orientation stays the same. So the top always is the top. There's a really good book. If you're interested in this, there's a really good book about it called Honeybee Democracy. Has everybody read it? Has anybody read it? Huh? Okay. It's called Honeybee Democracy, and it basically tells how bees make decisions. And it's a really good book. Matter of fact, I think this is probably one of the books required for the Master Beekeeper program. It's on the list of recommended reading. All right, so that's the end. Now I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I like that.
Someone told me one time that it was good to face the entrance of the bee either east or west instead of north and south.
Usually we usually face it either east or south so that they get early morning sun so they can warm up quicker when it's cool. In Florida, it's not much of a problem. So the question was, you know, should you orient your hives east or west or north or south? It's usually we say orient it south or east so they get early sun, because you want them to warm up early so they can get out and start flying. Late afternoon sun, you know, they're already plenty warm by the afternoon. So I would say either east or south. Yes?
You had said they made honey, like it sounded to me like to protect them from the cold. Is that, or why do they make honey?
Okay, the question is, why do they make honey? Because that is their energy source for the winter.
So they eat it.
They eat it, right? That's their food. Just like we can food for the winter, they're doing sort of the same thing because they have to generate an awful lot of heat. If you go into a beehive in the wintertime, and I'm not talking about wintertime in Florida, I'm talking about wintertime in Minnesota. You can go into that hive and the bees will be clustered. The center of that cluster, where the queen is going to be about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. All right, they need to stay warm, all right? And the bees on the outside, you know, it's a little bit cooler out there, so they'll migrate in, they'll move back and forth. But generally they're keeping warm, and they're doing that by burning sugar. And then the sugar gives them energy, they vibrate their wing muscles, the vibrating wing muscles generates heat, that's what keeps them warm in the wintertime.
And they can withstand our summers here where it's so hot?
Yeah, they don't have a problem. And, you know, we think about Florida being hot in the summertime, it really isn't, you know.
Well, 3 or 4 in the afternoon.
3 or 4 in the afternoon, still, what, it's 97 degrees? You know, that's nothing. You know, you're out in the summertime in Utah or Nevada, you know, it's 110. And their big problem is, you know, they're trying to cool off, but they need water to do that. They use evaporative cooling to keep the colony at about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So they have to have access to water. Here, you know, yeah, they have to cool off a little bit. If it gets too hot, they beard out front. But they can handle it pretty easily. Yeah.
I've heard multiple theories on why beekeepers use smoke while they're working in the hive. One was that it calms them. The other one was it retards their ability to release pheromones to tell the others to go attack whatever's coming in their house.
All right, the question was, why do beekeepers use smoke? Well, the smoke particles blocks the receptors on their antennae. All right, so they can't detect the alarm pheromone.
Okay, so there's a pheromone.
Yeah, so the alarm pheromone is that thing that, if you've ever gotten bees really upset at you, and you smell that sort of banana smell, all right, that's their alarm pheromone. So when you use smoke, it blocks the receptor sites on their antennae. So it's like a key in a lock, right? If you put a blank key into the lock, you can't put another key in it, the right key in it, to open the lock. It's the same way it is with the pheromones. The smoke is basically that uncut key, that key blank. You put it into the lock, that receptor is locked out. The alarm pheromone can't activate that receptor site. That can't send the signal to the brain to tell them, all right, now it's time to get upset. That's why they tend to stay calm. But it's basically to block their receptor sites.
Got it.
About how long would that last for the bee?
Well, if you're working with European honeybees, that might work for 10 or 15 minutes. When I'm working my Africanized bees, I'm smoking them almost continuously. And I actually had a bunch of people telling me, "Oh, you're smoking your bees too much." And I said, "Hell no."
Why would you not get stoned?
No. I am not smoking my bees too much. There are some things you have to be careful with Africanized bees. You don't want to go into the brood box very often, if at all, because that's one of the things that will cause them to abscond. They're real prone to absconding. So if you have a really bad small hive beetle problem, they'll abscond. You start developing disease problems, especially brood disease problems, they'll abscond. And as beekeepers, we don't want our bees to abscond. But from the bees' perspective, it is a good management tool for diseases that affect the brood. Because the adults leave, the brood is left behind, it dies, it leaves the diseases with them. Right? So it is a mechanism for escaping brood diseases like American foul brood, European foul brood, most of the viruses. You're going to leave behind a large proportion of the varroa mites. It's not going to help with something like tracheal mites, because the tracheal mites are in the adult bees. Okay. I think that answered the question. Yeah.
On the swarming, when you talked about that, you talked about the supersedure cells being created, and the original queen may not have left during that case, because swarm fish get to leave,
right.
Sure. But if she's being superseded, what happens when they're both there and that goes on? The bees work it out that she's the one that dies, or?
No, the workers will kill her.
The workers kill her.
Yeah, the workers kill her.
They'll kill the old one.
They'll kill the old one because she has stopped producing queen pheromone.
Okay.
So her queen pheromone production has reduced to the point where they don't recognize her as the queen anymore, and so they will kill her.
Okay.
Usually not until they have that new queen ready to come out. Yeah.
Is there best practices for the flooring of a hive, cement versus out in the grass or in a wooded area? Is there one preferred over the other? The reason I ask is because I set up one in a wooded area, and I used to get these little black beetle things. I put one on a cement block, and I don't have that.
A concrete block in full sun, or concrete
like this
floor
area,
in full sun is perfectly fine. Or you can use wheat cloth.
Okay.
And then in full sun. We do see that if you have a problem with small hive beetle, you're going to have much fewer problems in a full sun location. Okay. It seems that the beetles can't tolerate the heat as much as the bees can.
Maybe that's.
And so we tend to see less of a beetle problem in sunny apiary locations versus forested locations. Yes.
You recommend shade, number one, and the other question was, what are those toxic chemicals, those neonics that kill bees, so we can avoid using those products in our gardens and stuff like that? People that use pesticides and stuff, which ones are worse?
Well, okay, give me the first question first.
Shade.
All right, the question is, do I recommend shade? Generally not. As long as the bees have access to water, they will maintain their temperature. We seem to have more problems when bees are kept in shade than if they're kept in full sun. So I don't recommend shade. If you want, you can have a telescoping cover and then an inner cover. Lately, though, I have switched almost entirely over to migratory covers, just for ease of use.
What's a migratory?
Migratory, you don't have a migratory cover. Migratory cover is a board that covers the top, and it has two little cleats on the outside, but nothing on the side. It's called a migratory cover because you could take them and take hives and put them on a pallet and put them right against each other with no space in between. So you can fit more hives on a pallet. And then it's easy to strap down. That's why they're called migratory covers. So I've just switched over to those because they're easier to deal with.
And when hurricanes come, what do you do?
Usually I'll just strap the hives down. So I'll have stakes into the ground, or I have 5-gallon buckets full of concrete with a metal loop in it, and I'll run a strap over the top to hold, literally to hold them down. And usually that's all you have to do. If you haven't gotten into your hive in a while, they're going to be pretty well glued together anyway. So if you can prevent them from being blown over or blown off the stand, that's all you really have to do. I think, I'm trying to think if I've had any, I don't think I've had any of my hives damaged in either Wilma or the last one. Irma. So some people I know have. They had their hives blown over, but if they had strapped them down, usually that's what people do. They just strap them down. They can tolerate the wind.
How often are you supposed to go in and check the hive?
Once a month.
Huh?
Once a month.
BMR says once a month.
Yeah, once a month. A lot of hobbyists like working their bees. I have some beehives that if I could get away with checking them once a year, I would. They're just. These were some African colonies that somebody gave me. They're not pleasant. So that's why I have to really smoke them heavy. Yeah.
I'm having a hard time understanding if we're not supposed to have Africanized bees, why do you have it?
Why do I have it? The legal reason is that I have a permit from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. And it's because I'm doing research on it. That is the legal reason. The other reason is that, I deal quite a bit with bees that have gone into structures and how to deal with those. And so sometimes it's just a little emotionally unsatisfying to just kill bees. So I probably do it more often than I should, but I usually salvage bees whenever I can. If things are going really, really hectic, and we've had bees show up in like water meter boxes or irrigation valve boxes, I have been known to just go in and foam. But I don't particularly like to do that if I have time to box them up.
Africanized bees can't be domesticated once they're Africanized?
Oh yeah, you can. It is not easy. You have to go in, you have to kill the queen. Once you have your box set up, go in a week later, remove and destroy all queen cells that are present. All right? After a week, that colony cannot produce its own queen. So, So the queen is going to be desperate, or the colony is going to be desperate for a queen. Then you can go in and put in your own queen. The recommended method that we have is you use the cage that you put into the comb. All right, so it's just a hardware cloth and plastic screen box. You find a section of brood that's all capped. Put your queen in there, put the cage over top of her. When those worker bees come out, those brand new worker bees, oh, you must be mom. All right, we'll take care of you. We'll clean out the cells. She'll start laying eggs. Now she's really generating queen pheromone, and the colony is more likely to accept it. And then after 2 weeks of that, you start seeing eggs in the cell, or larvae, better yet larvae. Then you can go ahead and remove the cage. Go back and check, make sure they haven't killed her, because Africans are known for doing that. Just putting a queen in a hive, an African hive that's been dequeened. I know people who had to do it 3 or 4 times before they got the colony so desperate that they would take a European queen. So, all right, I think I'm getting the message that it's time to. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Kern. But I want to show Dr. Kern something because we did it at our last bee meeting, and a question came up, or a picture came up, that I thought was interesting. So, if you want to ask Dr. Kern another question while I get this up and running, you're more than welcome.
I have a question about splits. Best practices for if you do a split, the distance between the original and the split hive.
You know, I don't know the answer to that. What's the best recommendation?
2 feet.
At least 2 feet, I would say.
Right next to it.
Yeah, I've done all different things and it seems to work. The bees want to live, you know.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yep.
What's the easiest way for a lazy beekeeper to keep their bees?
Hire somebody.
Somebody else did.
Well, yeah, you can hire somebody.
In other words, you can hire somebody. But I mean, if you bee geeks get into like you open it up and you take a magnifying glass and you do it. Just want them happy and produce honey.
Yeah.
Can I do that?
Yeah, you need to check them.
Once a month, right?
Yeah, for parasite levels, for beetles, and with my Africanized colonies, I'll go in and I'll pop out some of the honey super frames, but I don't go into the brood box. But I can look down. If I take out the honey super frames, I can look down and I can see the brood. And I can take a flashlight and I can look at the quality of the brood. But every couple of months, you still need to go in and remove a frame of brood and look at it. Make sure you have a good brood pattern.
So it's easy.
It's relatively easy, yeah. It shouldn't take a long time unless you have 1,000 hives. Anybody here with 1,000 hives?
Anybody could do it, right?
Yeah.
Yep. It's easy.
Yep.
And it's fun.
Can you look at this?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Sure. These are supersedure cells from what you were talking about. And most time what you do is you see, well, why do I have supersedure cells that are evacuated but also have holes?
Typically the queen exits the bottom of the cell,
yeah,
and then she destroys the side of all the others to kill the competition. So he's got a picture of one that has the trap door on the bottom open, so that one supposedly made it, but it also has a destroyed side cell.
She was just really being thorough.
Okay.
Oh.
And every once in a while you'll see, especially on a supersedure, I've actually seen where you had 2 queen cells and both had the caps popped open. So we had 2 queens emerge. Sometimes they will fight. Sometimes I have seen, especially when you have sisters, I've seen 2 queens in the same hive.
Wow.
And it's actually not as uncommon as you might expect. So
would it be a good practice to remove one of them and split that?
If you wanted to do a split, yeah, you could do a split. It's not uncommon for it to happen. It's not going to hurt anything, I don't think. It's sort of like a ready-made split, though. Yeah.
So recommendations for a beekeeper who doesn't want to do a split but wants to control swarming. What would be the best practice? I know because you said they have the biological drive to swarm no matter what.
All right. If you don't want to If you don't want your colony to swarm, you don't want to make a split. What I would probably do is add a second brood box. All right, give them more room. You can also go in and pull out the side frames from the brood box if they're full of honey. Pull those out, replace them with new frames. It's a good idea to do that anyways because you want to rotate your frames.
When you start, if you find cells, find swarm cells, you cut them out.
Yeah, I just cut them out.
As long as they're not superseded cells.
You're not going to stop the swarm.
I know,
Yeah.
but slow it down.
But if you give them room and you remove those queen cells,
it'll help.
It'll help.
Thanks, Dr. Kern. The next thing, we're going to kind of transition into a different subject here. And so if you want to talk more about bees at the end of this conversation, everybody loves to talk about bees and knows about bees. But one thing I want to show you on this site real quick is, and it is a segue to our next conversation, is one of the things when we do bee meetings is we always talk about what are our bees eating. Because if you're going to be a beekeeper, one thing you'll find out is you'll know more about the local flora than most everybody else does. And if you don't, you should learn that because you have to know what your bees are eating because when you're inspecting your hive, you're inspecting it for strength, and if the bees don't have anything to eat, it might be a way that you're also evaluating the strength of your hive. So we always like to say what your bees are eating. And right now, if you go around South Florida, what you're going to see is this is lantana or some kind of sage. That's buttonwood. If you go and see the silver buttonwood, they all got little flower stems on them and they're all getting berries on them. This is a palm tree. If anybody asks me what my bees are, what my honey source is, my pat answer is it's raw local honey, but I think most likely the vast majority of the food that the bees are eating on the east side of Broward is palm trees, and that's a palm. These are the weeds that a lot of people put poison on their yard for in order to get rid of, but these are, I think, things that you want. This is Spanish needle. I think they call that false buttonwood, and this is
false buttonweed.
False buttonweed.
Yeah,
okay. He knows everything about it.
So this is Biden's pilosa, and this is spermacoe, and the native one is called glabra, and then this is the rough false buttonwood or buttonweed.
Spanish needle, false buttonweed.
Yeah.
And that's Mexican clover. That's a sea grape. If you go east here and walk the boardwalks and all that sea grape, they're still blooming right now. And that is what? No, right? Mangrove. It's mangrove. Thank you. I don't know if it's white or black, but it's mangrove, wild lime, and wild coffee.
That looks black.
It's black.
Yeah.
So
yeah, right now my bees are heavily going to wild coffee, wild lime, eucalyptus is flowering right now. I think Melaleuca's flowering right now too. But and then let's see what else. And then Biden's and spermacoe are going to be there.
What are Biden's and spermacoe?
Spanish needle and the false buttonweed.
If you were ever to go to one of Dr. Papawi's talks, he'll always tell you, don't put anything on your yard to kill the weeds because that's what the bees are eating. And then the other part about it is don't mow it as often as you think you should. There's one other picture here where before I introduce my next person, and we did a little thing about this. I'm talking about plants intentionally. These are plants that they took off a website that says they're bee-friendly mosquito control. I'm not sure how effective that is. but these are also happen to also be plants that bees like to eat. So my my segue here is the next guy that is going to talk is Dr. Gary Hitchcock, and Dr. Hitchcock, his doctor is about marine biology, but his passion is bees and wildflowers. And so we're real lucky to have Dr. Hitchcock here, and he is going to tell you about wildflowers in South Florida and what to do with them. Thanks.
All right. All right, thank you. So I'm going to talk about bee food. Props up here. Thank you. We all know that bees go to flowers, and we usually think that they give us this from the nectar, as Dr. Kern just described, but they also go there for pollen. They need the pollen to store, to give to the larvae as food, and that's why we get bees. This, okay, so this is just demonstrates with and without bees, what would we have? Okay, this was done actually at a Whole Foods in Rhode Island a few years ago. They preferentially took a picture just to demonstrate, you know, if all the bees were gone, what would happen in the produce department, what it was like, and then when they removed everything that had, in this case, commercial beekeepers provide pollination. Right? So you can see the difference here. It's kind of probably surprising that a lot of the citrus is still there. Dr. Kern can talk about, you know, what Florida beekeepers north of Lake Okeechobee do in terms of supplying pollination now. The groves up there, I won't get into that right now, but main point is that bees go to flowers because they need not only the nectar, which most all insect pollinators will go for, but they also need the pollen. And for example, butterflies can go to these flowers or others, get nectar out of it. They don't have to get their protein source from pollen itself, but bees, honeybees particularly, and bumblebees certainly do. So I was just going to show you just a few examples. I actually have pictures also of wildflowers. If you want to see the 10 most selected ones according to a study done up at Gainesville a few years ago, I can put that up later and show you. Just to point out a couple. This is one that's called tick seed. I grow about 5 species of wildflowers. Actually, my wife does a lot of the legwork for this. I need to acknowledge her, who also gave me this shirt. It says, working is for people who don't keep bees. That's a lie. If you've ever been out in an apiary in the middle of summer afternoon, 3 or 4 hours, it's real hot and tasty. This particular one is Coreopsis. It's called tick seed. There's about 15 different species of this in Florida. This is one of the most abundant, and this is Florida's official state wildflower. Okay? It's called Coreopsis leavenworthii. It's not named for the federal prison. It's named for a surgeon or a doctor who was here late 1700s, early 1800s. He was posted to one of the early ports on the east coast of Florida, cataloged a lot of plants and animals. All right? This is probably one of the most widespread of tick seeds, I think, throughout the entire state.
Yeah, it's very common because that's the one that they're planting along roadsides.
Yeah, preferentially. So you see this all over. Okay. Just wanted to point out another one here. This is a lantana. This one's called Depressa, variety Depressa. I wanted to point this out because this was initially found down in Dade County, along the coast up on the dunes. It's pretty much disappeared. Several Florida native plant growers, and there's a whole association of them, keep this basically in culture. And the fate of some wildflowers in the state is like this one. Some of their native habitats disappearing. So out of the couple 300 that are wildflowers that are, well actually there's more than that in terms of species in the state, in some cases they're in danger. So if you want to have wildflowers around your house, just don't go out into the Everglades or someplace and start digging them up. A lot of them are protected. You need permits if you're going to go for a particular species. So, talk just a little bit about the growers co-op and others. There's another one here called fleabane. I'm not quite sure what the species is. I got to talk to Dr. Kern about this. This I also got from a native plant nursery, one out on Flamingo Road. They said the original stock came out of the Everglades with a permit. Not quite sure exactly which one that is. In any event, there are a variety of different wildflowers. If you want to really go out into the wild and just look at them, again, please don't dig them up unless you get a permit, which is pretty involved for a lot of them. There's two major places you can go, sort of online, and first, I think I've got enough here. These are handouts from the Florida Wildflower Foundation. I think I've got enough here. If not, I'm going to pass around a sign-up sheet. If you want, I've got a variety of different documents, PDFs I can send you about these. This gives you a list of a lot of the easy-to-grow wildflowers. On that, you'll notice it designates different parts of the state. If you want to look for different wildflowers, pick the ones obviously locally, because they do vary a lot, because the climate in Florida varies from the subtropics down here to almost temperate once you get up into the panhandle. So the variety of different wildflowers that are present varies depending upon where you are. And also the ones that you can keep in your garden or around your home also vary depending upon where you are. Okay, so for South Florida, we've got some specialized ones that you won't find up certainly around Tallahassee, and vice versa. But if you're interested, as I say, I've got a sign-up sheet here. Info. You can just give me an email, and I'll email you a variety of different sources of information. The other major source of information is the Florida Native Plant Society. They can tell you for locally, and there's usually a chapter in each county, what's blooming at a given time. The local chapter here is called Kern, which is basically named for one of our native cycads. Okay, that's one that actually Seminoles used to harvest. They would extract out of it a starch. You have to be pretty careful and rinse it well because there's a lot of toxins in it, so presumably they'd all learned that by trial and error. But it's a real common one that you see around here, a cycad. Just for your own info, they meet the second Wednesday of every month at Secret Woods Nature Center at 7 p.m. They're a real active group. They've got a monthly newsletter. They cover all Florida native plants, not just wildflowers. They're a really good resource if you want to know what's blooming locally or where you can buy wildflowers, as well as other Florida native plants. So between those two, the Florida Wildflower Foundation and the Florida Native Plant Society, those are your two biggest resources to find out what's blooming around here. Where can I go to see something in the wild? Okay. And if you want, again, just let me know and I can send you information about all of this. Okay. A lot of people say, well, I really don't want to keep bees, or I can't keep bees where I am, but I'd like to do something for them. How about raising flowers in general? Well, almost any flowering plant will help out your native pollinators, but Florida wildflowers, particularly those that are, sort of from your local area, indigenous to it, are the best resource. That's what the local bees basically go to harvest. You can start your own wildflower garden. And this is a good time of year to do it, simply because the first step, if you're not going to grow them in pots, and I'll talk about pots in a minute or two, is basically picking out an area where I want to grow wildflowers. I can either go to a native plant nursery, Alexander's out on Flamingo Road, there's one over by the airport, have a lot of native wildflowers present. My wife and I went to the Florida Wildflower Society, our foundation's annual meeting up in Orlando a couple weeks ago. She held me back and was walking around. Oh, we need I've already got about 45 feet of wildflowers around the pool. But in any event, if you want to start a location at your own home, the first thing to do is kill everything that's growing in a plot of land. The easiest way to do that, don't put chemicals in it, is turn it over, either with a shovel or a rototiller, get as much of the vegetation off as you can, dampen it with a hose, and lay down plastic. It can be clear plastic, there's a big debate, because it doesn't make it. It can be clear plastic that acts like a greenhouse, or it can be black plastic that just absorbs the heat. And throw down some 2x4s or rocks and keep it as airtight as possible. And let it sit from now until July. That'll heat up the soil, get it up to over 120 degrees Fahrenheit on sunny days. It doesn't happen today. And it'll bake that soil and it'll kill almost all the seeds of all the plants that are present. Once that's dead, take off the plastic and it's ready to plant. You can either, as I said, go to nurseries, or you can take cuttings. I'm not going to get into cuttings and division and stuff like that today, from other people and plant them. Usually the best time, however, to do something like go for seeds is in the fall or for other species in the spring. You can go to Home Depot, you can buy a packet of wildflower seeds, and it's probably a general mix of seeds for the East Coast, right? But there's a group called the Florida Wildflower Growers Co-op, and their website is floridawildflowers.com. And those are different native plant growers that preferentially collect the seeds from about 40 different Florida wildflowers. And they sell them in packets like this. This is one called Sandhill Black-Eyed Susan. This is a different Coreopsis. This is Green Eyes. This is a mix made for honeybees with 22 different species of seeds in it. I think this one is $5. Covers 60 square feet. Plant in spring through fall. If you're going to bake some soil, all you need to do, if you want just a variety, not all 22 of these species are meant for South Florida. They include other species that will be present in South Florida, but you'll still get about 10 to 15 coming up from this packet over a square, like a 6 to 10 foot plot. You just take them out of here. Some of them are extremely small. I'm not going to open this. Mix it with a little bit of horticultural sand, coarse sand, not beach sand, okay? Or perlite, and just scatter it and rake it gently. All you need to do is press on it to get the seeds in contact with the soil and start watering. Don't need to water every day. Every other day is fine. When you water it, you use either a watering can with real small holes, or you can go online and buy waterers that have about 16-inch holes in them, just so you don't move the seeds around. Many of these are going to sit over the winter. You're not going to see them until the next spring. Okay? So some of them need a dormant period. It's not like up north where we got to put them in a refrigerator. But they won't necessarily come up this year. If you want color right now, go to a nursery and, preferentially I say, get our native wildflowers. You can put them in and enjoy it.
Are those perennials where they'll come back every year? Or
most will self-seed. That certainly self-seed. We started out with 3 or 4 pots and now about 20 feet of it.
We ended up with so many volunteers everywhere. I waited until they're like this tall, and then I'd pull them out and put 6 or 7 of them in a pot. We ended up with 20 pots of them, just from last year's reseeding.
I've been giving them away to either schools or municipalities. Giving some next week to the city of Delray Beach. They're starting a wildflower garden. University of Miami, which I retire from on Tuesday after 30 years.
Congratulations. Good job.
I'm no longer a doctor. People call me by my first name. The only people I have to call doctor are the students who didn't pass my courses. My parting shot to the university. In any event, they have an arboretum and they had a whole wildflower collection. I was telling John this earlier. After Hurricane Irma, they had to go through and dig up all the irrigation system. Those trees came down, ripped up the pipes. So the grounds crew went through and tore out all the weeds. So we have to replant, right? Yeah, right. So this is an easy way if you don't mind not having plants until next year, okay? Or you can go out and buy them. One other approach, you can, if you don't, say, I have an apartment and I can't keep bees, but still like to do something. I like the color. You can grow these in pots. And a fellow who's an active member of the Native Plant Society as well as the Florida Wildlife Society, Chris Waltz, spent a couple years figuring out how to do that. They just gave him an award from the Wildflower Foundation at the last meeting. And what he did, he said the real reason he did it was that at events like this, people would come up and say, you know, I'd really like to do something, but I'm not going to keep my own bees. Well, and I live in an apartment. You can get pots, you know, from Dollar General stores, probably the cheapest source, about this size. And you can put probably 3 different species in that. The easiest way to do it is you don't need to buy your own potting soil. These are used to growing in pretty low nutrient areas in many cases, and they need good drainage. Use 2 parts coarse sand, builder's sand, or horticultural sand.
Not ocean sand.
Not ocean sand, that's too fine, it's got salt, it'll kill them, right? Coarse sand is well rinsed. 1 part compost or potting soil without nutrients, without the additions they put in it now to hold nutrients, just regular potting soil or compost, and 1 part pine bark, large plant material, or pine straw. We don't have much pine straw here, it's mostly in northern Florida where they have most of the longleaf and other species. But so it's 2 parts sand, 1 part organic matter, 1 part tree filler, right? And you fill that up, plant up to, you can put like 3 different species, of course it has a variety of these, in a pot like this. Have a hole in the bottom if they're not wetland wildflowers, and there are some that are wetland that do best in almost waterlogged, and they'll do fine. He also grows vegetables that way. Minimal amount of nutrient. He didn't want any fertilizer in with it. He didn't want any insecticide. So that's what he uses as a potting soil specifically for wildflowers, and they do real well. The real reason he did this is that he bought a home up north of Jupiter, and he said there's this much soil and then it's limestone. And he said he tried to plant a small tree, and he basically spent 2 weekends with a pickaxe, and he said there's got to be a better way to do this. So he actually developed that, and now a variety of schools and other places are using that as an approach. So if you want some wildflowers out of the balcony in your apartment, that's a good way to go about it. If you want to have, I'm not going to get into species, some plants that do well in wetlands, you put them in there and you drill a hole in the side of the pot, maybe a ½ inch below the soil. Drain out the water right at the top. Don't put any drain at the bottom. And that works well. Some of the more specialized ones that do it better. So you can get a variety of different plants, either, you know, to have even on the balcony of your apartment or around your home, as we've done. It's taken us about 3 years, I think, to get the...
Yeah, the first year they don't look so good when they go to seed, but that's the magic time.
Yeah.
Let them go to seed,
After
let
2 or
them
3
look not
years.
so good for a while. So you can
And
get
they
something
will
for the
survive.
next
I mean,
year.
they're used to basically living in pretty depauperate places out in the middle of nowhere in the center of the state. Or here, before it rained every day. So, you don't really want to keep bees by yourself, but you still want to sort of make a contribution and actually have some things that are nice to look for. That's sort of the way to go about it. There are a variety of different resources. And again, if you want some of these, I can provide them for you. The Native Plant Society, the actual Florida Association of Native Nurseries, has a free directory in here, this is more species than you ever knew existed in the state. They're all native, as well as where you can find them in different counties. And there's a listing for each one. I think there's like 200 or 300 in here total, as to what part of the state they grow in and what size pot you need. And there's 2 or 3 local nurseries that are designated as native that are also a real good resource. Also, if you are involved in kindergarten to grade 12 education, there's some places where they'd like to make wildflower gardens at schools. The Florida Wildflower Foundation has a grant program. Through June 10th, you can go online if you're a teacher, fill out a 3-page form. It's not too extensive. You need to have one of your supervisors at the school say, yes, we can do this at the school. And they pick 50 applications every year. They give you something like $2,000 or $3,000. They give you seedlings in the fall and classroom materials. The idea is to get the kids involved and have them realize, you know, sort of the value of a lot of our native plants. And you can get a second year's worth of funding out of it. As I say, they pick 50 of those. Additionally, if you're involved in a nonprofit, they've got the same sort of program. That runs from January 1 through, I think, sometime in February for applications, so that's not open. But if you're interested in this, either through a city, a nonprofit, they can probably get it from here if they wanted to. For schools, it's a good resource. Sorry.
Somebody asked earlier about how the best way to be a lazy beekeeper. What is there? Are these the best plants to pick if you're a lazy gardener? Like if you don't want to water so often, will these guys do okay?
They'll do okay after they're established. Usually the best way, if you're going to take something like this out of a pot, put it in the ground, you do 4 by 2. 2 weeks water every other day. Next 2 weeks every second day. Next 2 weeks every third day. Takes about 2 months. Okay. Then, for the most part,
or until we start in the rainy season.
Yeah.
The weather takes care of it. Now's a good time.
Mid-May through mid-October is when we get 70% of our rain.
Perfect.
John.
Can you touch upon really quickly about seed bombs?
Okay.
If you're talking about seed bombs,
yeah.
Don't talk about it in a TSA line.
Yeah, don't get on a plane when you're taking seed bombs to your grandchildren and tell them you have them in your backpack. You'll miss your plane and you have to call a lawyer. Seed bombs.
Southwest Airlines?
Any airline. They have, like they said in Men in Black, no man, we're from the federal government, we're not aware of the sensitive. Anyway, yeah. So seed bombs basically are usually seed mixes. General seed mixes, you put them in with torn up newspaper, saturated in water, roll them up, dry them out, and you can do this with vegetable seeds also. Throw them out in an appropriate area, and after a year or so you'll start to get flowers. The rain just dissolves all that. Many of these seeds naturally just fall on, regular soil that doesn't have any fertilizer or anything else. In cities, people have been going by fenced-in vacant lots and using a slingshot, firing seed bombs over the fence, sort of beautified. A couple places they got caught. Anarchy, yeah. Gentle anarchy. But Teresa actually is involved with a group of Girl Scouts who are doing that as a silver award. And when they come to some of our show and tells, people will be lined up behind the table to make it. They had, what did they have, 100 there a couple of weeks ago? So that's a real popular thing for kids. Gets them, again, involved. So that's one way to do it. I know one of our members actually uses that with vegetable seeds. I know I just didn't go up and plant it.
Just to clarify, so those wildflowers, they're seasonal, as in like there's certain parts of the year where wherever we planted them, they'll die off and we won't see them until next season.
Right.
So we should be careful planting things in that same area, right?
Yeah, if you look, I think on that chart that we gave you, it indicates the seasonality of many of these. Okay, like F is fall, W is winter, S is spring, S is summer. The reason I like this particular one is this comes into bloom in October. It lasts until about December, and that's usually when the rest of them basically are dying off. So it gives you a little.
I have that come in my yard by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
As a general rule, fleabanes are usually in the fall. Daisies are in the spring, as a general rule.
There's a lot of daisies.
So you can't have both in the same area and they just switch out upon?
No, you can. That's what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
so
always stays.
pick a variety that will come in and bloom at different times of the year. One called, did you have blanket flower up there?
No.
There's one called blanket flower. It's got a red, you probably possibly seen, it's got a red center, yellow around the outside. That does really well in drought. Once it basically blooms, they'll hold on to their flowers throughout the entire winter now.
Yeah, they also call it Indian blanket.
Yeah. That's it.
I personally really like Richardia. The Richardias are Mexican clover is the common name, but they're actually in the coffee family. And down here they call them Florida snow because they flower during the cool months of the year and they'll just completely cover an area. And you look at your bees when they're coming back and foraging on it, and they're white. They're completely covered with white pollen. It's a really good pollen source for them.
So, yeah, if you're interested in any of this info,
It's a vine, right?
in terms of any of the handouts or anything, just print your email on here. I've got most of these
But the
available
vines.
as files, either document files or PDFs. I can send them to you. And keep in mind the, okay.
It's an exotic.
Here's mine. So, yeah, I encourage you to think about wildflowers. You know, it obviously gives us this, but these give us this, and just to help them out, no matter where you are, even a pot of these on a balcony.
Basil's a great one.
Basil?
Bees love basil, but they'll go to any of the mints. They will go to oregano, but they really like basil. They'll go to thyme. They'll go to any of the salvias. They like the blue salvias, but our native tropical red salvia, that's more of a one for bumblebees. But
Also, if you're interested, I can show you. I got a variety of books, both for Florida as well as the Southeast on wildflowers. A lot of these also have, if you really want to get into it, good information on how to propagate it, both by division, by cuttings, as well as seed. So if you're interested. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. We got, does anybody have any general bee questions that haven't been answered? Yes, ma'am.
If you're interested, just look at BRHPC for classes, etc.
Just contact, and just send an email, and if the email doesn't get answered, call the number, and Harry, right here, our Director of Communications, will put you in the right place. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I live about a half a mile from here, and I have a swarm that appeared on the side of my house yesterday. My husband would like to call an exterminator. I'm not sure what the right thing to do is.
Is it, well, if it's really a swarm and it's not taking up residence, it's not going to be there very long.
it'll probably be gone by tomorrow.
The downside to that is you don't know where they're going.
Right.
Okay, right now they're out in the open, they might move into your attic. But there's Charlie right here, there's a bunch of people here that will, if you want to talk to them or give them an address or talk to Harry, he'll hook you up with someone. One of the people in the club will go rescue or relocate that.
I can help you today if you want to see me out.
Okay, thanks.
Always looking for more bees.
Yeah, he's always.
And a swarm is the easiest thing to get.
Okay.
Swarms are easy and they're fun, and they're nice bees.
For the time being.
For the time being, okay, thank you. The, one of the, well, you guys, there's two different worlds here, okay? There's African bees, and then there's regular beekeepers. Dr. Kern works with African bees, and when you work with African bees, I think you get a different mentality about, or concern or understanding of bees. As beekeepers, all of us will encounter our hives at any given time. I always like to say you could sometimes, you know, be a naked beekeeper, and then sometimes you have to have more protection on than you need. And my take on it is that if you walk, as you become a more proficient beekeeper and you get to know your bees, they will get to know you. And you will also know there's times when you open up your hive when you don't have to worry about a thing, and there's also times when you open up your hive, the second you open it, you just say, okay, this is not the right time or day, and you close it up and go back on your merry way. But as far as South Florida bees, if you talk to northern beekeepers, especially like the northern inspectors, they come down to Florida, and the bees that we manage on a daily basis, they think are rather defensive, okay? And we don't know, I guess maybe we don't know better, okay? But I think that most of the bees that we have are, especially I've noticed in the last 3 years, have gotten far less defensive. When we first started being beekeepers, they talked about African bees, and then they talked about ABF, and then they talked about aggressive bees, and now the new term that they like to use is defensive bees, because bees technically don't want to come out and sting you. They want to go out and make honey and make more a stronger and better hive. The fact that they meet up with you at the wrong time and at place is when you get stuck. But what I want to do is, Charlie Whitehouse is right here. Charlie is a seasoned sage beekeeper, and he's also one of those guys that'll take any kind of shaped container and product and try and turn it into a beehive, okay? And he will try anything, and he's been very, very successful. And he's also a proponent of beekeeping and beekeeping management. So, Charlie, if you want to share some of your stuff.
I want to touch on just basic beekeeping equipment, because we've been talking about beekeepers like you guys are all beekeepers. You know, some of you have never seen a hive. So the basic hive that you guys are thinking, when you say beehive and you close your eyes, it might be the bees living in the tree trunk. It might be the old-fashioned water hives that are made of wicker. And when they use those, you got to destroy them to get the honey. You basically end up killing all the bees because the honey drips and ruins all the bees. Here in Florida, part of the requirements of being a registered beekeeper is you have to have a beehive with removable frames. And the reason you need removable frames is because there are some problems that the bees encounter through their life that could be an issue for other beekeepers and spread disease. So the frames are inside of these boxes. Get a good look at it. This will be the bottom box. This is a Langstroth type beehive. It's been around since the late 1800s, and it's pretty much become the norm in the United States and other countries as a beehive. There's many other ways to keep bees other than this, but this is the standard. You can go purchase this, and it's standardized, and I can buy a bottom box from one supplier, and I can buy a top. So the bottom box will be considered the brood cavity where the queen is making more bees to be workers, and then the top area of the hive is separated by a queen excluder. That's what that screen is there. She's bigger than the normal worker bees, and she can't fit up in there. She would love to go up there and lay eggs in that top box as well. She would fill the whole box with brood, and then they would run out of room pretty quick.
Yes, I do.
So you keep her in the bottom where she can raise her young and her brood, and then the worker supply is plenty, and they go out and forage, and they bring back and they store honey, typically in the top, because we're manipulating them, because there's no way for her to lay eggs in the top, so it's only room for honey. The bees will draw a comb on these frames. This is different types of foundation that you can add to the frame, or you can actually put in empty one with popsicle sticks on the top, and the bees will build all of their own wax on this frame. And since they have sides to it, they'll only attach to this wooden frame. This is called the frame. These are the removable frames. This would be called a deep frame because it fits in the deep box. They have medium frames, which will fit in the shorter box. I think we have a couple here. Let me grab one real quick. Oh, there's one there, short one. Oh, there is. Yeah, sorry. This is the honey super, and as beekeepers, the plastic foundation is more for the commercial operators because they're moving their hives a lot. They're transporting it. If you don't have plastic in here as a structure, the wax is pretty delicate. If it gets hot, turns sideways, or jostled in any way, it can fall down, and then the bees will still live in it and be fine. But as a beekeeper, we won't be able to remove it as easy to do our inspection. So that's the other reason it's good to go in once a month. You don't want to go in every week. You will chase the bees away. Like Dr. Kern says, some bees are more susceptible to they don't want to be messed with at all, and you mess with them and they leave. So you don't want to chase them away. So don't go in it any sooner than a week. If you like to be a person that goes in every week, get yourself 2 hives. You can alternate. You want to mess with this one this Saturday, next Saturday you mess with that one. If you're going to start off in beekeeping, I would recommend 2 hives as a minimum, because if you start to have problems and you're crashing and you want to fix the problems in this hive, you have a hive right next door that you can rob resources from. And since they're on modular frames that are standardized, you can just switch the frames out. Take an empty frame out that has nothing going on. You go to your hive next door. You take a good frame out that's busted with activity and fresh bees ready to hatch. You can put it in that beehive, and it will help prop up the colony and keep it supported. So that's why it's good to have this type of box, is because it's modular and you can interchange components, and you can get more boxes from other beekeepers. I can call somebody. If I call John and say, John, can I come over to your yard with a nuke box? So there's another term there. A nucleus box is only half the size of this. This is 10 frames. Is it 10 or 8? 10 frames, which is the standard. This shorter one here is 8 frame, which is trending now more so. Older beekeepers have bad backs, and this is lighter weight and easier to manage. Even people want less work, go to the all mediums. They don't have a deep for their brood. They'll use 2 mediums as the brood container, which is about the same size as the deep, a little bigger, and then they'll put their queen excluder after 2 mediums, which it makes the same volume of space. Now the nice thing about that is if you want to make multiple hives and you're into getting more bees, all you got to do is wait till that's busted up with activity, take the top box off, put it somewhere else, leave the bottom box, put an empty one on top of both, and now you have 2. So it's the best way to do a split is when you have the mediums like that and you just separate the 2. So you can just make multiple hives like that. I've gone, in 3 years, I've gone from 1 hive to close to 40 hives. I got between 30 and 40. I'm the kind of person that just jumps in and goes crazy and tries all kinds of different stuff. I have hives like this, which are Langstroth, which is what I started with, because I didn't know any better. And now I've started building my own hives from pallets. I get pallets and I separate them with a Sawzall that are made out of pine, and I build top bar hives, which is a different way of beekeeping. This top piece is the top bar of the frame. I don't have sides or bottoms to my frames, so it's just a single piece of wood cut from a pallet laid across the hive. The difference is, since I have no sides, I have to build the side wall of the hive on an angle, and the bees won't want to attach to that angle. So it keeps, the bees build themselves the comb. It's more of a natural type of beekeeping. If you see beehives in the wild, they don't build squares. They build like paddle-shaped comb. And in the top bar hive, they're able to do that more naturally. It's long. So for me, I just had back surgery last year, and and I've ruined my back, but I'm doing good now, but I'm being good. So if I have top bar hives, I don't have to bend over, and I don't have to pick up heavy things. The biggest thing, I got 3 top bar hives less than a mile from here, just on the other side of the train tracks on that road, and I went in there this morning, and I was able to check 3 hives in like 10 minutes to see what was going on, and there's not so good activity in the 2 closest to the south. The furthest north hive has busting up with activity, but I'm standing back from them right now, and I'm going to let them do what they're going to do. If they collapse, I can borrow from the strong, but right now the strong is not even really strong, super strong, so I won't want to make it weaker by robbing it right now. I'm going to give it time to get established. The way I started those was I had another top bar hive at my house with the same configuration. I made my frames the same size, so when I transport my frames, I can drop it in a deep box and transport it in a standard box because it's the same size.
How do you keep the brood
The queen excluder is doing all that. The queen is
on yours.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh no, I don't. The bees naturally will put it in a top bar. It's easier, believe it or not. The last 3 or 4 frames closest to the back are going to be honey for insulation and storage. They keep that honey as far in from the entrance as possible to be able to protect it.
Okay.
Something coming in there has got to go way to the back to get to that. It's got to get through all those bees. I trick them and I pop at the top. Yeah, so it does get mixed up. And all I do, because I have a top bar hive in my house, and I went into it, and basically what I did was I had drone comb, which was not hatched, and I just cut that off and threw it in a bucket, and then I cut off my honey and put it in a different bucket. And I ate the honey, and I threw away the drone comb. Now, the reason I did that is because varroa mites, which is a pest that bothers bees, and it's like a tick on a dog. It's a tick on a bee. So the mites love the drone because the drone stays capped more, and she can go in there and lay more eggs, and more mites will emerge from a drone than will from a regular capped worker cell. So it's an integrative pest management where it's natural. I'm not putting pesticides. I'm just removing the drone as it's capped. Now the trick to that is you got to get it while it's capped. Because if you put drone, this particular frame, this green one, I don't know if you can tell, other than the color, the size is different. It's a drone comb, a pencil will about fit, a number 2 pencil will almost fit inside the hole of the comb. That's because the drone bees are larger, they're bigger. So this is manipulating the hive to build only specifically drone comb. The queen will come, the workers will build the drone comb as it's needed for the hive, as they're about to split or things are going really good, and that's the only time they build drone. Drone are not around all the time. They're only around when the hive is super strong and it's ready to do a split. Springtime is here. Let's make more bees. We have to send males out to get with those queens for reproduction to pass on the genetics of the hive. All right. So drone serve that purpose. This is made so that we can, as a management practice, we can put this in there, check it. If it's capped, pull it out, scrape it all off, and throw it away. Because we get rid of the mites. But, however, beekeepers need to keep a certain amount of drone within their colony, especially if they're guaranteeing that it's European stock. Because think about this, all the European stock queens are great and well, but what if the new queen emerges from the hive and she goes out and gets mated? What is she going to mate with? Drone. There's way more wild feral drone because beekeepers don't like drone because they really don't do anything other than mate with the queen. They don't produce honey. They don't do any work in the hive. They're actually a drain on the hive. So as a beekeeper, drone, bad, because it ain't doing nothing. It's just taking up space. But you have to rethink that. As a beekeeper, European stock, you're making drone, send them out there, let them do their work, let them serve their purpose, and move on. Support European hives by producing European drone, and allow them to be produced. The way I achieve this, I am super cheap. I have been able to pay for all of my bee equipment, 40 hives, $100 a piece. I've been able to pay with all of that by selling honey. $10 a jar. So little Christmas money I get, a couple $100, maybe I'll throw that at it. But I haven't gone to the bank, because my wife would kill me. She controls all that. So all of my hive equipment, all my jackets, all my smoker, all that stuff I bought with honey money, my replacement stuff. I had to buy the initial jacket up front because there was no honey unless you got bees for a good amount of time. How much honey can you get from a beehive? I didn't understand this. I was purchasing honey from a beekeeper and she would run out. Well, how can you run out of honey if you got bees? What's going on? You know, you squeeze them and get it. You know, I want honey. So honey only comes when the plants are blooming. So the plants don't bloom year round. So the bees follow that cycle of the plants blooming and collecting their honey and storing it in the box. In Florida, we're lucky. You might get 3 different flow. We call it a honey flow when the plants are blooming and the bees are bringing it back. You can get 3 different honey blooms, honey flows, seasons in your box. And as a beekeeper in an urban setting, like John said, you probably have palm, but you might have other stuff. Your honey is going to taste different almost every single time you get it because it's different plants and different forage that they're bringing back. You can see if you inspect your top box, you'll have different colors on each frame. Not only will it be different on each year, but it'll be different each frame. They'll collect and they'll put all the honey from one source on one side. Maybe on the other side it's a different source. Or another frame, it's a different source. It's all about how plentiful it is. The bees don't go out and forage and mix things up and get all different plants and just randomly pick nectar wherever they can get it. They look for the same exact plant on that trip out. They keep it in their honey crop and they bring it back and they pass it on to worker bees here, and then the worker bees that are inside the hive bring it back up to the top and deposit it into the wax that's been drawn out on the comb of the frames to leave it there. And then that's nectar. And then that has to be dehydrated and it gets capped off, and that's when it becomes honey. Honey is just nectar that is at a moisture content of less than 18%. They've dehydrated enough to be 18% or less, and it won't ferment. It won't go bad. So honey pretty much lasts forever, definitely. So it's really good. We know goodness about honey. But the equipment, back to the equipment. So this will be the top box. Above the clean excluder would be considered anything for honey. A honey super. We call them supers because you can add more to it. You just keep stacking them. Keep adding them. I haven't really been successful with putting, because I like to collect my honey when it's light for my back. I'll open the box and I do my inspection. If I see a honey frame today, I'll grab it. I don't wait for that box to get completely full of honey. So I'll collect little short frames because it's less work on me. I don't want to lift a 100-pound box to carry that around and mess with that. And the same thing I can do is I put it in a new frame. I always have frames with me that are drawn because the way I collect my honey, there's 2 ways you can collect it. There's probably more than that, but the 2 ways that I use are, there's a scrape method where you put it in a bowl. You just scrape it off and put it in a bowl, and you get all the wax and you get everything. And then you put it in a paint strainer and you squeeze it out, and whatever drips out is what the good stuff is. The rest of it stays in the paint scraper and you give it back to the bees, or you melt it down and make something with that wax. Or you just remove the cappings only, which is the top surface of the wax, and you put it in a machine called a honey spinner. And it's just a giant centrifuge. You just hand crank it and the honey gets slung out. But the good thing about that is you're leaving all the wax there, other than the capping. And the bees, when you put it back, they can just start filling it right back up. They don't have to build out that comb again and go through that process. So anything I can do to make it easier for them to bring me more honey, I want to do.
Do they clean it out? Because I've got a spinner and it makes a really mess. I mean, it keeps the combs intact, but it makes a really big mess. When you put it back, it's still dripping.
Yeah, they'll reuse that right away. The bees are meticulous in their cleaning. And the thing with the hive, if there's any dead bees or young with problems, they rip it right out and they get it out of there as soon as possible. So anything they're going to use, they're going to keep. And anything they don't want in there, they're going to get rid of. So they're crazy about cleaning. I wish I was as crazy about cleaning, but you kind of get the point. I'm kind of a little lazy here, but other than the beekeeping, I'm crazy with it. But so this is the bottom box, upper, deep super, medium super, clean excluder. Now we talked a little bit about tops. We had mentioned 2 different tops in the discussion here this morning. We said a migratory top and a telescoping top. And the top we have here is a telescoping top. You have to use an inner cover when you have a telescoping top. because the bees will attach comb from the frames to that top. And if you try to lift up that top, you're going to disrupt the bees all at once and make a big mess, and you're going to have bees all over you, mad, because you're Winnie the Pooh kicking over the tree and going in after the honey. So you need to have an inner cover to prevent that from happening. So it's 2 pieces of equipment that you have to have if you use this type of setup. So I use pallets, and I get a regular pallet off of Craigslist, and I get 2 of them, and I cut one apart, and I put the slats from the one, and I fill in all the gaps, and then I build a little stand off on the pallet to hold 4 hives. And I put this pallet wherever I'm going to keep bees. I have 8 sets of bees, 8 colonies of bees in Davie, off Griffin Road, just west of the turnpike, and so it's 2 pallets, 4 hives each, and then so I can't use this type of lid because my boxes are butted right up against each other on that pallet. So you have to use a migratory type lid, and I use nothing more than a piece of scrap plywood. I got tons of scrap plywood when Hurricane Irma came through. People were posting on Craigslist, hey, free plywood, whatever, come get it. So I took my truck and I loaded up with free plywood, and I cut a bunch of tops, and I just reinforced the top. I use the same top and the bottom configuration. So I'll take a bottom board type with this brace, and to put it on top, I just put the bottom facing down, and to put it on bottom, I put the top facing up. So it's the same piece of equipment. So if I grab 2, I have a top and a bottom, and I have all I need. So 2 boxes, queen excluder. I use queen excluders. I've tried not using queen excluders, but I've noticed for myself that when the queen gets up there and she starts laying eggs, typically she'll put drone in the top and eggs in the top, and then that will disrupt my honey production. And the way I fund my beekeeping habit with honey, and I want as much of it as possible for the sell. And so the queen excluder for me works good. And I use plastic ones just because they're cheaper. They have metal ones which are really nice. And the metal ones, the queen excluder will get gummed up from time to time. The metal ones are nice because you can put them on the barbecue grill. Harry mentioned this trick. You heat up your barbecue grill, you throw the metal one in there and cook it for a little bit, take it off, it's brand new. So that's kind of a nice feature about a metal one compared to a plastic one. Other than that, I don't know much difference between the 2. So there's a bottom board, and there's some differences with bottom boards. So there's differences with the top. Migratory cover is just a piece of plywood sitting on there, and that's okay because if they attach to it, you can turn it sideways and pop it up. You can scrape, just like they can attach to the inner cover, the telescoping cover. You can't get in there and scrape it apart to get it separated. You can take off the telescoping cover, and now you can start scraping in between the inner lid and the honey super and get rid of that wax, and you can get it out without disrupting the whole hive. With a flat piece of plywood, I can do the same thing. I can still get in there and scrape the honey super and get rid of the wax. The bees need proper spacing within the hive. If it's less than, I think it's, 3/8 of an inch, John, or is it less than that? 3/8 of an inch. If it's bigger than 3/8 of an inch, they'll put wax. If it's smaller than 3/8 of an inch, they'll propolyze it, which is a glue that bees manufacture from the sap from trees and other things, and from glands in their body. And propolis supposedly has all kinds of great healing powers, but for me it's a pain in the butt because it glues everything together. But it's kind of good too. Somebody mentioned during the hurricane, all I did during the hurricane for my bees, I keep them on my roof at my house. So I got them spread out because I got 40. I can't have them all at my house. I wish. I would definitely get a call. Chris would come see me. So I keep about 6 at my house. So I keep them on pallets at my house. I just ran a strap to the bottom of the pallet, to the top of the box, ratchet it down, leave it alone. Also, if the hurricane's coming, or you know it's hurricane season, don't be busting into your hives every week during hurricane season. The propolis will help hold the hive together. That way, at least if it blows off and goes through your neighbor's house, it'll be one box. You can go get it. It won't be scattered bees everywhere. Big problem. It's already, I didn't have any issues with any of my hives. I was expecting to lose my roof, so I wasn't really worried about the bees and the roof. They're on the roof. The roof goes, the bees go. I lose my roof. What am I going to do? But I did lose a fence that's directly next to my beehives, and all my neighbors people were walking on the sidewalk, and it's crazy because there's a fence on the sidewalk and it's full of nails sticking up, and they're walking, stepping on the fence, like, dude, that fence is full of nails, whatever. But then I told them, oh, there's a beehive. Oh, okay. Go around. After the equipment at the bottom, can be a little different. It can be a screen bottom, and that helps promote. It's really not for temperature control for the hive. Some people say, oh yeah, it's good for that because it keeps it ventilated. It might help the honey dehydrate a little faster, maybe if it's dry out, but if it's wet out, it's going to have the opposite effect. But the screen bottom is more for pest control of that varroa mite. Sometimes you have good bees that are really clean fruits, and if they feel something on them, they're going to get it off, and they're going to call in their sisters, and they're all going to get it off, and it's going to fall. And if they knock it off, and you have a solid bottom board, the mite's just going to crawl right back up into the hive. If you have screen, there's a better chance that it's going to fall out of the hive, and it won't be a problem for your particular bees. So that's why the screen bottom is such a good feature to have. Myself, I don't use it because I'm cheap and I use pallets. If you put a screen in a pallet, it's no longer a pallet. You can't lift it up with a forklift because the structure is gone. So I don't use that. But it's a good idea. This little piece here it has 2 different settings or 3 different settings. You can take it out of the way, and you got wide open entrance. This is to protect your hive from robbing. From robbing. Robbing is where you have a weak hive and a strong hive, and the strong hive goes in and kills other bees and gets to the honey and takes it out and takes it back to their hive. And then they do that waggle thing and say, hey, it's free over there. And they all come over there. And pretty soon you got a weak hive that's a dead hive. So you can put this entrance reducer on here, and it's got 2 different sizes. This is the long for the bigger size, about 4 inches, 5 inches, and then it's got one that's an inch to kind of really slow things down. So you can control how many bees are allowed in and out. Of course, wide open entrance is great because more bees bringing back honey, but wide open entrance is bad because robbing in a situation. It's just what they'll do. They go for free food, you know. You can't pass up a buffet. Upper. I think that's all the equipment. The other thing is gloves, the protective equipment. You need this. Like John said, South Florida. I heard people, North Florida, when they go out there, they got t-shirts on, they got gloves. I heard his story about the guy picking up them out of a garbage can. They won't do that today. They won't do that today. But you can get into it pretty cheap. You can find the gloves online. Beekeeping gloves. I think I just bought 2 replacement pairs. They're like $6 for a pair. And they're goat skin, and they have long sleeves like this. The long sleeves are good because if you have short sleeves, you're going to find your jacket ends about here and your gloves end about here, and you get a nice little ring tattoo from bee stings along your wrists. And that's kind of a painful spot to have bee stings. I don't know of an unpainful spot to have a bee sting. So yeah, really, it's everywhere. It still hurts. It's been 3 years. I've been stung a lot. It still hurts. I don't try to keep Africanized bees, but sometimes I'll catch a swarm and I'll try to see how those bees are going to be when they get big. See, the problem is with Africanized bees, when they're small or they're a swarm, they're not defensive. They're just like regular European bees. They're great. They have really good characteristics about them. Like you said, they don't have disease. They grow really fast. They're really defensive. They get lots of honey. So it's all plus, plus, plus. But the fact that they have killed people in the state is a big minus for them. So they don't want to promote that.
If you get stung, do you keep on doing what you're doing?
I do. I have to. If I drop it now, so it's like, oh, they're getting me.
Yeah.
Well, I have a big. Now I have a bigger mess that I'm leaving behind. I have to maintain control. I got to take care of it. So I got my. If I pull down my pants, I'm not going to. You're okay. I have work pants and they have wide open pockets and there's white cotton inside. And the bees figured that out. And they went in there, and what I'm going to say, I have aggressive hive on my roof, and I'm going to change out the queen. I'm going to find her, I'm going to pinch her to death, and I'm going to throw her away, and I'm going to go in there for the next 2 weeks and cut out any kind of queen cells so they ain't going to be from her. And I'm going to put in a new queen that's got to be European queen from where I'm buying it, so it'll be more docile hive. It's just gotten out of hand where I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to. So if I don't want to mess with it, I don't want my neighbors to have to deal with it. Right. That's really where it's at, because I can ruin it for all the beekeepers. If I keep aggressive hives at my house and they sting all my neighbors, what are all my neighbors going to know about bees? Oh, the bees are jerks. They're sting everybody. We don't want them. So the laws might change about how beekeeping is. Right now, if you follow the rules and keep it nice and keep the bees nice, everybody's happy.
So when you get stung, you just say ouch and you keep on going?
Yeah, it hurts for about 20 minutes. And then it's better than it used to be. I used to get stung and my hand would blow up real big and it would hurt for 2 days. Now, since it's been 3 years, I get stung, it's just out for 5 or 10 minutes and that's all I get. I don't get swelling up anymore. I don't even care anymore. I don't even, because it's a hat, because they sting through the glove sometimes. So if I'm getting stung by mean bees, in the middle of that, I'm not going to pull off a glove. They're going to get, so yeah. That stinger only pumps for about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and half the time when you grab it, pull it out, you might end up squeezing more poison in. So the best thing to do with the stinger is take like a business card or a driver's license, if you got time or care, pull it out with that. Don't grab it and squeeze it. Take it out, you actually squirt the poison in, which is what you're trying to avoid. Yeah, the venom. Sorry, venom. The stuff that hurts. The stuff that hurts. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to scare people, but you mess with bees, you're gonna get stung. So, sorry. But it's not all the time. I messed with them this morning. I didn't get one sting. I use smoke. I use equipment.
I just wanted to say the reason why you're able to continue is because you have that smoker going.
Yes.
So the pheromone that bee that gave up her life to sting you
Yes.
is telling all the other bees go get her.
Yes.
So you go ahead and smoke it and then they'll leave you alone.
That's why I'm changing out that hive, because those bees don't care. African bees, you don't want them. They do not stop. They do not care. A European hive, you might get stung twice. That's it. Africanized colony, you could be 20, 30 times. And it keeps coming. You don't want them.
I think it's really important. Everybody talks about the Africanized bees. If you are managing your hive, it's not likely that you're going to have that problem.
Right.
But if you do end up starting and getting your own hive, and you do end up with a problem, what you do is you pick up the phone and you talk to some folks with the Bee Association or your mentors, and they will come help you and change that and fix that. Okay, so it's not, everybody talks about
not the end of the world.
bees, and if I have a beehive that might go after it. It doesn't really happen like that. And if you are in a situation where you think it's more difficult than it is, you call for help, and that's what you do. I had a truly Africanized hive where the bees swarmed and would chase you for a mile down the street. We had to euthanize that hive. We couldn't even move it somewhere. I had help from people who knew what they were doing. If you are not a beekeeper and you end up with a situation, the community of beekeepers is really will help you fix it. Yeah. They have your back and they'll help you fix it. So don't worry.
You have support.
So don't worry. And when you hear about all the diseases and everything else, really don't worry.
The first
Learn
year.
to manage your bees and have fun with them. And any problems that come up, you'll have a lot of help.
And I only have these problems probably because I have 40 hives. So the more you have, the more you're going to see. Keeping 2 hives, the chance of you having Africanized hive, unless you go out and catch them out of a water meter box, pretty low. Pretty high if you go get them out of the water meter box. They like that, Africanized bees.
One thing on a good note is beekeepers do not have arthritis.
Yeah.
We get stung with bees and it's anti-arthritic. We don't have allergies because you eat the honey, you have the pollen, and it keeps you anti-allergic.
So it feels good a couple days later.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if that has to do with it.
But you always keep Benadryl close.
Yeah. And if you ever have a problem breathing, call 911. Get emergency help. That's the indicator.
You do learn, Charlie. You do learn early on whether you're allergic to bees.
Yeah.
You do learn that real quick.
So you want to protect your face.
Yeah, right.
Because the bees tune in to the breath, and they like the eyes. So if you protect your face, you could enter your hive pretty much with this. Early on, I used to use no gloves, but now I know which hives are difficult, and I don't ever go gloveless because I just don't want to risk it. Because I want to be able to keep working the hive. So if I have gloves on and there's, oh wow, they're really stinging me today, it's no big deal because I see it on the gloves. They sting and they try to fly away. It looks like a little kite, trying to get away. But those bees are going to die. It stung me. They don't want to sting you because that's the end of their life. Within a day, they're going to die quick. So a veil is minimum. So minimum equipment: veil, a long sleeve shirt, pair of jeans. Make sure your shirt's tucked in. If you want to go for a jacket, it's a good idea. When I first started, I bought the full onesie. I don't know what it's called, but it's a full outfit. It's too hot. The full outfit's too hot. Blue jeans, loose fitting blue jeans. If they're tight, they'll get right through there. Work pants, no good. The cotton work pants, they get right through there. Get right in there. Wear long socks is a good idea. So you see this, I get lit up sometimes because I drop them. Don't mess with them at night. You're asking for it because they do a lot of crawling at night. They don't really fly because they need the sun for navigation. If you actually knock bees out of your hive by crawling, where are they going to go? Right up your legs. It's better to, you know it's sweat when it's going down. You know it's bees when they're coming up. So you want to get them while they're low. So you end up taking one in the shit in the thigh. But it's not, it's fun. It's fun. I really enjoy it. It's a good time. It doesn't cost anything. If you're able to sell your honey, you're able to get it back. And even giving honey to people and helping people out is very rewarding. This gentleman, Eli, just came to the meeting the other night. He said he got a flow hive, and I have a flow hive. I got interested in that. That was early on. And I offered to give them bees. I said, hey, just call me, man. I'll hook you up, give you bees. I want to make sure they're not mean. I'll wait till they're nice and big. When I get those European queens, we'll do a split on that. And that's the only weight I want to do to make sure. I don't want to start you off with mean bees. It's no good. Is there any questions? Hopefully I can answer. No. Sure.
The beehives have to be lower to the ground, or you can raise it so you don't have to bend.
You can raise it. You can raise it. You can put it on a bench like that. You can work it. Yeah. The height is not. It's actually, like you said, it's better for your back to be high. The only time, the reason they're low is just because they'll put it on a pallet. The pallet's low. Some places you can't put it low because it might have a tendency to flood. So if it floods where you are, you want it high. They lost a lot of beehives in the hurricane from flooding. So on the west coast, they're recovering now from that. But they had them high already, but storm surge messed them up. The flooding is the problem. I do, yeah, I have a hive tool. I do. The one I use is just a basic Home Depot paint scraper. It's the 7-in-1 Home Depot scraper. It's more expensive than a real hive tool, but it's available to me easily. I can go to any Home Depot and get it. But Home Depot doesn't stock this. You know, this is a hive tool that has a scraper on it, so that if I have a problem with my inner lid attached to the frame, I can sneak in there and scrape that comb and break it loose and open it up. It has a scraper on top, so if you open up the box and the bees have built burr comb on top of the frame, before you remove it, you can drag it with this and scrape the top of the frame. Kind of like this, clean it off. I recommend if you're going to do any kind of cleaning on your frames, do that at the end of your inspection, because that kind of riles up the bees when you're doing all this, and you're like, oh, what is going on, you know? So save that for last. Go in there. In the inspection process, well, here's another type of more natural type of foundation to help speed things along. It's wax. It's made from real beeswax, and it's pressed into the shape of that smaller worker bee, and you attach this to that wood frame. Some people like to use this more natural method, but commercial people, they don't like this because it gets jostled around, it breaks. It's delicate. It's a little pricey. The bees seem to like it better, so if you want faster bees growing in your hive, this might be a good thing. You can also put wax on the plastic. You need to. It comes with a little spray. If I pass it around, it's a little sticky, but after a little bit of time, it kind of goes away, or the wax moths get at it and take it away, or you want to melt some wax on this just to kind of speed things up, the process. Where you're going to get wax from a beekeeper, that's the one good use of wax, other than making a candle that I've seen. People are like, oh, you got lots of wax, what do you do? I don't know. I can't find nothing to do with it. Lubricate a zipper. This is the beeswax. You know, I don't have that many zippers. Shit. I harvested, see, I'm a loony, because I'm sharing with you guys. I bought 4 55-gallon drums full of wax cappings for $20 because I'm an idiot. So I did 2 things with that. I let my bees eat at it because it was honey in there too. So I fed my bees in the winter with that, and I also melted that wax and rendered it, and I was able to get 200 pounds of wax. It's a lot of wax. I mean, this is maybe 1 pound. So 200 of these from those 4 barrels. A lot. What are you gonna do with it? I was able to sell it to another commercial beekeeper, to So he coats his frames. That's how I learned to do that, by selling it. He's like, oh, you're doing wax? I'll buy some. What are you doing with it? Oh, I'm putting it on my frames. And I'm like, well, I won't sell you all of it. I'll sell you what I can. So this is the wax. The best product for it for me is for the hive. So the maintenance part, you pull out frames and you look at them and make sure that there's eggs. If you see eggs, you don't have to find the queen. If there's eggs, you had a queen in the last 3 days, which is great. She's still there. Next time you check it, has eggs. Don't look for the queen. Don't rip it all apart. When they do an inspection, there's a guy that came to the bee meeting. He inspected 300 hives that same day, and he pulls 2 or 3 frames from every box. And he looks down the box, looks at the most population. Yeah, the brood. You got to go in the brood because that's where the disease is. It's all brood associated problems. So you're looking at the brood.
The beetles too?
Beetles are there too. Yeah. So there's a what's that Swiffer at? I saw it carried it over here. There's a nice way to get rid of beetles using a cloth, paper towel, Swiffer, the one without the chemicals. Put little pieces of it in your brood box, and the bees will nibble at it and rip it all up, and it will be like a SOS pad. And the beetles will go in it, and their legs will get trapped, and they're just stuck. So it's just a mechanical way to catch beetles. You take that out, you burn it, you're good to go. You can just throw it in the trash if you want. But you're going to put that in your brood, not your honey, because the beetles are after the pollen, and the pollen is in the brood. That's crap. Sorry. Any more questions? No more questions? You're good.
Thank you.
No problem.
No, thank you very much. If anybody wants to become a bee geek or learn more about it, Broward Bee Association meetings are on the second Thursday of the month, 7 o'clock, Coconut Creek Community Center. There's also a bee meeting on the last Saturday at the Jacob Area Park at 10 o'clock in the morning if the east side's more convenient for you. But go to the BBA Association, call Harry, he will tell you anything you need and he'll point you in the right direction. I want to thank the Patch for allowing us to use the facility, especially Jamie and the Broward Regional Health Planning Council who helps back us up in this program, and all the bee geeks that showed up to help us out today. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.